Cancel culture, puppets, props, puns, podcasts.
Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Cancel Culture.
I'm sorry. I gotta go. I'm sorry. I got
Pop
another
Culture
gig.
Magazine, and we have a special guest today, all the way from Long Island. Let's have a nice hand for one of the funniest comedians out there, the joke teller himself, Joke Land. Let's hear it for Jackie Martling.
Hey,
All right.
I'm not sure why I'm doing a show called Cancer Culture, but
Cancel. This is John Cancel over here. He's, and it sounds like cancel culture. So, has anybody approached you like that? Any of those woke people? Then telling
no, I got my cancer all on my own.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I wouldn't have paid any WED. I've been doing the same
I get it once in a while.
I've been doing the same horse crap for 50 years, and I'm not changing nothing. I don't say midget anymore. I never did say the N word, the K. There's nothing more disgusting than saying the N word or the F curse. So, to me, that almost is more insulting than, that's, it's not like you're not saying it, but you play by whatever rules they want. But
I heard all the
sees
words.
what I do. If they think what I'm doing is being offensive, they're out of their mind. I'm there for the funny and no other reason, and everybody knows that. I hope.
And recently, I had read because that everybody likes to get those jokes out of old magazines, but I read an old Boy's Life, and in there was a cleaned up version of the two flies landing on a pile of dung. Okay, I swear to, and Boy's Life, and I thought, how perfect is that?
Listen, what goes around comes around, comes around. I mean, I've been such a student of this crap for so long. The first joke I ever told on stage was from Boy's Life. And
Highlights. How about Highlights magazine? Remember?
That was the
dentist office.
Yeah, that was the low life of the whole thing, because Boy's Life always had Think and Grin. Which automatically got Boys Life if you were a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout. And they asked me when I think I was in 5th grade. I never knew why, but they asked me to host, to MC the Blue and Gold Dinner. They had a thing in Cub Scouts called the Blue and Gold Dinner where the kids.
I was a wee blow.
Right, you do. And the Cub Scouts would come with their father to this dinner, and it never dawned on me, like, what if the kid's father was dead or something? I guess they'd stay home. But they asked me to be the MC, and I literally had to come home and ask my mother, what does MC mean? And she says, Master of Ceremonies. And I swear to you, that things in show business never go away in your mind. Nope. And we did this Blue and Gold Dinner, and to host this, they had to get a box, like a beer box or a beer crate or an orange crate, and put it behind the podium because I was so short. I needed
like Alan Ladd.
Oh, Jim.
Talk into the microphone. Nobody told me what to do. As far as I knew, I was going to lead the Pledge of Allegiance and introduce the Scoutmaster. And I was looking through Think and Grin in Boy's Life, and I saw this joke, and I said, you know what? I could make this about Mr. Bot. I didn't know anything about the concept of switching a joke or adding somebody, just like my stupid little 5th grade mind. And I said, I went up on the microphone. The first thing I said, last night, Mr. Bot had a dream that he just.
Good old Mr. Bot.
Don't call me now. God.
Sorry.
I said, Mr. Bot had a dream that he jumped out of an airplane with a parachute. And after he jumped out of the airplane, he pulled the ripcord and nothing happened. And then he woke up, and when he woke up and got out of bed, his pajamas fell down. Not only it was but it was almost like a dick joke. It was like the first thing I and of course they roared, and like I'm sure the scoutmasters looked at me like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It took me years before I remembered that. But how funny is that? And that I actually
You a
went
Boy
back
Scout
and tried
too?
to locate that joke, because if you go, everything's on the internet now. You can go back to all those thinking grins, but I don't know what year, what month. You know what I mean?
Oh, I was just looking through them because if I can't carry them, I'll rip out the jokes in the back. Like in Playboy, I used to rip out the jokes out of the magazine, but you turned me on to 6 to 60.
Those were great.
Those were great. They had like dirty pictures that were drawn in, like dirty cartoons.
But 99 out of 100 of those things were so terrible. And you know who made the famous guy, Gershon Legman? I don't know if you saw The Aristocrats, but the guy who was the all-time great collector of jokes in the world. He had put out 2 huge volumes, and he's so interesting. He was so interesting. He made his living in France, selling jokes to that guy in Texas for that $5 a joke for 6 to 60.
It was like
I got them all. That guy, Gershon Legman, world famous. There were certain issues I didn't have, and he had all of them. And
Okay.
I sent him money, and he would take the bus from where he lived in France to go down to where they had a printer or a copy machine.
6
and he
to
would copy
60.
all the pages of the Sex to 60s and mail them to me over here in the United States. Like nobody even believes that. I mean, because first of all, how do you explain to somebody what Sex to 60 is if they
I know,
know?
it was.
Hey, I don't know if you can see. Where's this pointed?
The joke files over there.
Yeah, that down there in the bottom. That's all those piles. Those are all Sex to 60s down there.
You're the greatest, man. You're my idol now. I can't believe, it was hard to find a good joke in Reader's Digest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in Sex to 60, you could always go there, and you felt like, I always felt they were for like hillbillies and down south, for the folks.
Hey, and the 2-bagger joke that I'm famous for selling to Rodney was told to me by a guy who it was told to him by some guy from Tennessee, because it was called the Tennessee 2-bagger. And I came across that joke in one of the Sex to 60s. You know what I mean? Nothing's new under the sun. You know that. You know that.
It was a more recent boy's life, okay? And so I think you went the full Mandela on there. I'd love to hear that. I forgot it was called Think and Grin, but that's what it was called. And it was, oh man. Now, we have a segment that we talk about Mad Magazine, and how did that influence you? Did that influence you, or did you? Yeah, we here at Kensil, we love Mad Magazine.
Yes,
we're brought up by. Oh my gosh!
That's Don Martin.
Don Martin
remember the picture of John and Yoko.
Oh
Don
man!
Martin's version of John and Yoko. That's me and Nancy.
That's
joke when Nancy hired Don Martin to do that for us. I was such a fan. Yeah, I actually went to Dick DiBartolo's apartment about 5 years ago.
Well, he influenced so many people with his sound effects, even all those words that he had, like boing, or boink and Mr. Faduzu.
Yeah, words you've never seen anywhere else.
Right? Exactly. I mean, that's what made him, sort of Dr. Seuss like.
When I put my first album out, I sent it to everybody in 1979, and I sent one to William M. Gaines, the publisher, and a letter, and asked him a bunch of questions, and he didn't write me back. He sent me my letter back with his answers in the column and under the questions. Do you like Rodney? Of course I love Rodney. Did you like my album? Yeah, blah. And I sent one to Don Martin, and I could pull it up if I knew you were going to talk about this. He sent me back he actually did a pencil drawing, because one of the jokes in my album was, how did Captain Hook die? He wiped with the wrong hand, right? And he actually sent a cartoon, a simple pencil drawing of Captain Hook, and he's picking his nose with his hook. And Jackie, thanks for the album, which is, I don't know if it's worth anything, but it's classic,
Oh, of course it is. He's one of the backbones of why there were so many comedians during the 80s. I think that Mad Magazine was responsible for it. And
the guy I do my podcast with, Peter Bales, that was our jumping off point in 1979. He said, Mad didn't get less funny. He said, we just changed our senses of humor,
Yeah.
It's,
I got it. I got a couple of the newer ones, and they're
It's not the guys we grew up with, like Mort Drucker and Sergio.
It's not intelligent as it was, but you can still pick and choose and find something to laugh at.
But those marginal thinking departments, what's his name? Mort Drucker lived in Syosset.
Yeah,
his daughter was a good friend of my girlfriend's when they were kids. And that's why in all those movie parodies and TV parodies, whenever there was a map or something, you'd always see Syosset or Hicksville or Long Island Railroad Station.
Yeah.
I used to get such a huge kick out of that.
They look like Long Island people. Didn't they look like Mad Magazine looked like Long Island people because they had the same style and the same sort of mores, I guess you'd say.
Yeah,
and,
same lack of style.
Yeah, it was,
real middle class, ball breaking.
Yeah, I guess that's where those guys came from. I mean, they were pretty comfortable. They had all those spook magazines before, all the pulp magazines, and they made them stop. So they wanted to make something funny, and they made Mad Magazine.
William M. Gaines got pulled before Congress because they thought it was I don't know if it was communist or they thought it was bad for kids. Those original Mad Magazines, they were little paperbacks, and they were wild. And then he went
Blackboard Jungle out there.
Right. And I had such a, everybody had the baseball cards that the mothers threw away. I had a zillion Mad magazines. And at one point they disappeared. And I said, what happened? My mother had opened one of them. And remember, there used to be the Mad Primer or the Mad Primer, whatever you call it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it would be.
This, and there was something about farming. And the farmer said, where's Charlie? Oh, Charlie's out behind the barn smoking reefers, which I, of course, had no idea what that meant. But that was enough for my mother to throw away all the, Meanwhile, she was a crazy, but she, talk about hypocrisy. My God.
When they did Archie, they called it Starchy, okay, back in the day, okay?
That was actually, that's so long ago that was, I think, in one of the little books.
Right. But that was one
they were vicious. They were, I think they took a little of the edge off when they moved to the bigger magazines, because those little ones,
When in the one of the panels, they're emptying out Veronica's handbag, and a reefer and a syringe fall out. Okay, just like in the back. How they used to have those sneaky little jokes in there.
Yes.
I love them.
The marginal thinking department. Remember, they'd have a theme, and they'd have little things actually written in the margins sideways.
You worked for a couple magazines that you worked for the Penthouse, right?
You know what happened? The guy, Richard Bleiweiss, the art director of Penthouse, was a huge Stern Show fan, and he asked me if he could interview me for the magazine. And I said, are you kidding? Of course. So I said, it'd be really fun if after each of the questions and the answer, we put a dirty joke. And he said, okay. So he interviewed me, and it was a long interview. It was, I think 1988. I'm not exactly sure. And then he called me up and he said, wow, we got such an incredible reaction to your jokes. We want to do a monthly thing. And I said, that's great. So I did the monthly Penthouse joke page for at least 10 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but my joke page, Playboy has the centerfold.
Right.
And the jokes are on the back.
Right. So they copied Playboy.
The only time that my jokes were on the back of the centerfold was my first one, which was June 1990. And after that, they would randomly put it someplace else in the book. But my first joke page was on the back, and the girl who was the centerfold was a huge Stern Show icon, Amy Lynn Baxter. And it was so funny because if you held up my jokes, you could see her pussy. It was, and she's a dear friend, that was always our bond, and I always
it's like a watermark on a dollar bill,
Instead of a guy goes into a bar, I put Minervini goes into a bar, or Hawthorne goes into a bar, and the guy's always got a kick out of seeing the names, God, I did that for a long time, man. Wow.
That was I thought that was the pinnacle of having the greatest job in the world, is being able to. Did you get to mingle with any of the playmates or whatever they called them over there?
Yeah, I'd get invited to the parties, and it was always fun. The greatest story came out of one of those parties, but it wasn't a Penthouse party. It was a Playboy party. But it's funny. Me and Gilbert Gottfried did a photo shoot for Penthouse.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, and the idea was we were going to start out in incredible dressy men's clothes, and the girls dressed to the hilt. And then with each passing, pictures, we had on less and less and less and less. And we started out with coats, long British overcoats and top hats and a cane and everything. And slowly but surely we lost what we were wearing till we got down to these ridiculous boxer shorts. And of course the girls were naked. And they're all walking around naked. They're so pretty and it's so fun. And like a couple of days later, Blywise says that, the Penthouse was right there on Broadway, Upper Broadway. He says, why don't you come over and have a look at the pictures? So I go to look at the pictures, and I go in, and they have the light board, and the thing that you look with your eye to look at the picture.
Sure.
And I'm looking at them, and this girl comes over, and she was a little tough on the eyes, I mean, a little well worn, And she said, "Oh, Jackie, how'd the pictures look?" And I'm like, "Pretty good." And we're standing there, and Blywise comes over, and she says, "Oh, Rich, these pictures are great. It's funny. Jackie didn't recognize me without my face. They must have got there 5 hours early and had their faces made up. You couldn't, once I knew, I was like, oh, that's Janine, like, holy Christmas. They must spend
Jackie, they have tricks now. Okay. They can make guys into women. I was in burlesque for 10 years, and the mousiest, homeliest little girls would come in, and they would spray things over their bruises, and they would, they would cake on the stuff and put this, and they were gorgeous, and that's,
what was always funny. What was always funny was when you were on the road in the early 80s, you always see the same, there's Soupy Sales and there's Dom Herrera, whatever. They always had the same 8x10s in all the clubs because all of us worked the same clubs. And there were always a couple of 8x10s of women. And you'd see them and they were like cute or, attractive. And I remember I showed up for some gig. I think it was in the South somewhere. And I got off the plane, and this ugly little troll comes up to me and says, "Hey, Jackie, we're working together." And I looked at her, and she told me her name. And I mean, you had to stare at her and somehow in your mind morph that face into her 8x10 because it was such a quantum leap. Like, how do you say you're such a pig? You're 8x10. So, and I can't even, I think I remember the girl's name, but I'm not going to say because you get in trouble.
They were the original glamour shots. You know how they
No.
get those glamour shots now that, you know, and hey, and taste have changed. There's Lizzo out there. We can make fat girl jokes again. You know,
Jesus.
I mean, it's kind of weird, you know, that some things are passable and some things ain't. So
Yeah.
you used to work for High Times too. Did you work for them?
Yeah, I got interviewed
The
by
two
them.
greatest jobs in the world, High Times and Penthouse.
I was very
Jackie.
good friends with Kennedy. Michael Kennedy owned the company, and literally the name of the company was Trans High Corporation. And they owned a few things, and one of the things they owned was High Times. And there was a great movie called Autofocus. I don't know if you ever saw it. You really should see it. It's
Hogan's Hero
the
guy.
story of Bob Crane,
Yeah.
who started out as a real, you know, mom and pop DJ in California, really up and up, great guy. And he wound up on Hogan's Heroes and wound up as a real slime ball, going around doing plays, like, you know, at small theaters. And him and the guy he traveled with, and they would bang all the women and videotape them. But this in the days when the video players were, you know,
It was gold.
Rush.
Yeah, nobody had that.
3/4 inch video. Well, I don't even know what kind of video, but the movie was so interesting because it starts off like
Greg Kinnear.
the colors and the reds and the greens, and as the movie progresses and he gets darker, the movie literally gets grainier. I mean, it's brilliant. I you know, it was unbelievable, and they had a big party for this. And I guess High Times was one of the sponsors, one of the investors in this movie. So me and Michael Kennedy were at the party afterwards, and I had some of my homegrown with me. It was so funny. I said, Kennedy, I got some pot with me. He said, oh, well, let's smoke a joint. And this was right after they banned cigarettes. You couldn't get a match in a bar. You know how you say to the bartender, you got a match? They didn't have matches. I can still remember. I'm with the owner of Trans High, and we're going around trying to grab a match so we could get. And then we went out and got stoned in a little cubby hole, and it was raining. I'm like, you couldn't even make this shit up. You know, he was a great guy. He was a great guy. You know.
Do you still, when you smoke now, do you get the, you know, even though it's legal and it's a lot more accepted, I still have that, you know, instinct to hide, you know.
You know, I hardly smoke anymore. I still grow pot. I have an attic full of so much weed. I give it to everybody. I mail it to everybody. I don't give a fuck. And and when I never cared. I've been growing it since like 1999 when I moved into my house here, because there's a nice little place that's kind of hidden away. But I live on Long Island on the North Shore at the Gold Coast. And Center Island is right next door with the richest people in the world. And every 5 minutes there's a helicopter going over. And I'm thinking they're going over the helicopter and they got a camera with a little pot leaf that can zoom in on, you know. And I'm thinking, no, Jack, you're not going to spend that kind of money just to get your, you know, your 20 plants. But I've been growing pot and giving it away for 20 years. And, you know, and now this year's crop was mostly Gorilla Glue, which is just crazy good pot. But, you know, I
love the name.
Masturbating, you know, I forget to have sex with my girlfriend. I forget to smoke a joint, you know. It's amazing what I forget, you know, but it's great. You want some pot? I'll bring you some. I'll send you some. Where are you guys sitting? Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Philadelphia. Yeah. Yeah. And John's been opening my opening act for, you know, 20 years, you know.
I have a truck.
He has a truck. Okay.
Hey, Peter Bales says hello. He would talk. He's my
Peter
co-host.
Bales, yeah. Intellectual. I mean, you know, he's a smart guy. Always was.
He's my co-host on my podcast, Stand Up Memories. And we're like the Smothers Brothers, you know, and he was laughing about dancing around all your shit. You know, it was always fun. And, you know, I have never been able to, there's a lot of bookings I just can't get in Philadelphia. And I think, believe it or not, I really think it's because of John DeBella. I really believe that he must be friends with people, because everybody's like, why aren't you working the Helium? And why aren't you working the Keswick? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like there's a, you know, Philadelphia was one of the biggest stern markets in the world. I mean, we were gods there. And Whit, you remember I was headlining in Philadelphia before I met Howard. Like
You were headlining the Comedy Works. That we just had a reunion for the Comedy Works with Steve Young, okay, and Wayne Cotter was there, and the Mixed Nuts. Remember the Mixed Nuts? They all,
of course. And what was the guy with the bow tie?
Tommy Moore.
Tommy Moore.
No.
No.
Not Gabe. Garson.
Norm, what a bow tie. Not Norm Clark.
He's the only guy that wore a bow tie. And remember Judy, she passed away, right?
Judy Toll was a very good friend of mine, and for a long time, she was hooked up with Tom
Wilson.
Tom Wilson from Back to the Future.
Yeah, he
Biff.
wound up in the bully in Back to the Future.
Yeah, and they made a movie about her, okay, called My Sister Judy or something, something like that. But she was very funny with Alice Dice Clay.
Andrea Nice Clay.
I remember getting a kick out of her, and I remember being very attracted to her, and I couldn't figure out which side of the fence she was on. Did she like girls or guys?
No, she liked guys, but she was.
I don't think her and Tom weren't a thing though, or were they?
Yes, they were, and and I guess she had a crush on him, and he went on to bigger and better, or different, how people get.
He played the trombone in their act.
He what?
He played the trombone.
Yeah. Oh, he played the tuba, not the trombone. The tuba.
All right, tuba. Maybe that's what I meant.
And he said. I said, "Where's the tuba?" Because I got all the props. I'm saying, "Where's the tuba?" He said he was waiting for a plane. The tuba was there. He's going to check it in. He just left it at the airport. He said, "Look, I don't need this anymore."
At some point, yes. Yeah. I finally put down the guitar. My whole first year in comedy, I wore the guitar for every second. And then the East Side Comedy Club opened up, and we each got to MC one night of the week because Richie had Jackie Mason. So I went up to start the show with my guitar and told my jokes and played my guitar and then put it in the stand. And then after the first act, I said, well, it's pretty stupid to go up there and put on my guitar and turn around and say, all right, here's Jim Myers, and turn around and put down the guitar. So I just went up there and didn't take the guitar out of the stand. And it was like the light bulb went off, like, how cool is this? I'm standing at the microphone. I got nothing cramping me in, and that was that. I still played the guitar, but I didn't. That's where I went from a guitar player who told jokes to a joke teller that played the guitar.
I try to go out without my crutch. I mean, props. Without that, sort of thing, and I do all right with it, but. I have to admit that I've stolen one of your jokes. That it was if you want when I only need it. Okay.
Well, you better be careful because when the guy that I stole it from finds out,
it was the one. Look down. Okay. You want a joke? Look down.
That's actually something I actually made up. Believe it or not. You want to laugh? Look down. That was a heckler. One of my heckler.
Oh, shit.
I don't use those anymore. I was looking at my old heckler comments. Some of them got pretty intricate. It was like, it's a shame you don't have a glass belly button. So when your head was this far up your ass, you could look out and see what we're doing.
Now, I'll never remember that one, but I did that a couple times, and it shuts them up. It shuts them up because it makes them deal with their manhood right there,
Or the head explodes trying to figure it out. We used to get so much stuff at the Stern Show. They would send us everything. And at some point, we had a sneaker sponsor. And they found out everybody's sizes, and they sent us a bunch of sneakers. That's what they did. And I don't know what the sneaker sponsor was, but I got like 3 pairs of sneakers that were blue. One was green, one was blue, and one was red, but they were like plastic, like they were this weird, ugly stuff, these bright fluorescent colors. So I just threw them in my closet. And then one Christmas I came out wearing, a pair of black pants and white shirt. And my wife, Nancy, said, that's not too festive. Where's the green? Where's the red? I said, what? I said, hold on. And I said, wait a minute. And I looked in the closet and I took out these horrible red shoes, like almost like Dorothy's slippers, I put them on and everybody liked them so much. I said, you know what? I'm going to wear these on stage. And for a couple of years, I wore them on stage and they were so great because people couldn't help but comment. It was like, it like lured the hecklers. And it's on one of my CDs because I was ready. And you can hear them. They say, nice shoes. And I said, yeah, your mother gave them to me because I made her come faster than Dennis Rodman.
Oh my God.
Said, how is she tonight? Is she working or is she resting her snatch?
I guess the sneakers weren't
nuts. And I just almost like I set a bear trap,
The sneakers weren't the only ones with a tongue. All right. But
hey,
unbelievable.
Do you got it? I'm sure everybody knows the story. I asked somebody about this and they said they were actually there that night. The story about Dennis Wolfberg and the
Dennis Wolfberg, yes. That was at the Comedy Works on top of the Middle East restaurant.
Right, with the fake door, with the fake
David,
wall.
And Wolfberg, okay. I remember he lost all his. I had to lend him clothes, okay, because he got robbed on the way there or something like that. But he was there that night. He had he was so funny and so he was just making it when he passed, okay, and
he would end his show with that goddamn American Pie that lasts on and on and on. And when he was done, he got such a huge ovation. He was in such fucking euphoria that when he grabbed the blind piano player, he was in another world, and he
was waving like this. He was waving to the crowd like this. And the guy went boom and
walked him right.
What happened?
There was Dennis was on stage and he's getting a big ovation, and there was a piano player. We used to have a piano player when when comedy clubs actually had a piano player. That's and
he came out to accompany Dennis on that song. That's why he was still on stage, and Wolfberg was supposed to walk him off the stage with him. So it was the classic thing where Wolfberg went through the door and the guy went into the wall. It was like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
And he hit a beam. I know that stage. I was on it a billion times. He hit a beam, a 2x4, and it went bonk. Okay, it was like somebody got a triple. You know what I mean? You could that same wood hitting wood or something like that.
There actually was a blind comedian in Philadelphia at that time, and he wasn't faking it. And the MC would bring him on stage and have him face the curtain.
And
he picked up on it. It was part of his act, but it's just hilarious.
Now,
do you remember the Middle East restaurant? The stage was the show was on like the third floor.
Yep.
If you had to take a leak, you had to go downstairs and walk through the restaurant and walk past the belly dancer.
Yeah.
Who remembers? You tell that story? Yeah. To take a leak, you had to go downstairs, unless you wanted to walk all the way through the crowd to the front. It was just so much easier to just. These people are eating dinner, and there's a girl, and not an especially attractive girl with a belly. Oh,
it's a shaky business. On
her belly than on her pussy.
They were artists. Danny Thomas used to go there and see them. Okay, they were Lebanese, and Danny Thomas, and I think Telly Savalas was there, and all sorts of celebrities used to come there in the 70s. That was a big thing. But belly dancing. I mean, they didn't have that. Here.
Now, do you know? I'm sure you guys know all this stuff, but I just make sure. You guys know the Stern Show. I'm sure you saw Private Parts.
Uh-huh.
And the famous story of the girl coming on the show and getting the first girl that got totally naked on the radio.
And what happened? She got totally naked on Stern show?
Listen, this is crazy. If you don't know this, you're going to go wild.
Wow, I can't wait.
I never listened to the Stern show in all the years I was on it. All whenever they played best of since I left it, I just didn't. In the old days when I used to listen, I'd play my Eagles cassettes or listen to my comedy. I never listened to the radio except 1010 wins once in a while. But when I first started on the show, when I had first gone on there, maybe the first month or so, I was working once a week on Tuesdays. And I figured, when they called me, I didn't know where I was going. So I said, let me listen to this a little bit to get an idea of what it's all about. And it's so funny because I remember, like, where were you when Kennedy got killed, right?
Right.
I know exactly where I was when I heard this because I was on a step stool in the kitchen of the house we were renting and I was fixing something. And if you're talking about trying to catch a hummingbird without its wings moving, I mean, I just didn't fix anything. So I'm on a stool and Gary's got, it turns out, I guess there was a couple girls at the same time, but your memory blurs. But I didn't even know I don't think it was even Gary yet. I think it was still Boy Lee. And there was a girl there that wanted to get naked for Howard. And he said, bring her in. And I didn't know anything, everything that happened on that show, the farting in the girls' faces and all that stuff, that all really happened. The only thing that wasn't true about that show is he would exaggerate what they looked like. If he said they were a 10, they were usually like a 3, but the girl was really there with no clothes on.
Good press. Yeah.
So this girl comes in and I'm on a stool and he says, who are you? And she says, my name is Maria. I work the door and I'm a comedian at the Comedy Factory outlet in Philadelphia. And my favorite comedian is Jackie Martling. And I almost fell off the stool. I've gone back and tried to find a copy of that. They must have erased that so fast your head spun, or at least in retrospect. But it was Maria who worked. I don't know if you remember. She worked the door at the Comedy Factory outlet. She was a little, really pretty Italian girl. I never got near her because I was never in town long enough. I know Rich Jenny used to bang the hell out of her.
She married. Stu
Bykowski.
Stu Bykowski, yes.
Stern Show. He wrote horrible things about the Stern Show.
Of course he was, because he was filling out. I think he was connected with those radio people that that might have blemished your name out there, in Philly. I want you back.
I was working an autograph show years ago, and this guy came up and said, Jackie, me and my brother are opening a club called Helium in Philadelphia. We really need you to come work there. Would you work there? I said, of course. I love Philadelphia. I always did really well there. I did my first CD at the Funny Bone on South Street, blah, blah, blah. And then I never heard from him. And I've never been able to get through to anybody or find out who hates me or whether
I'm
hip enough,
years.
Do you remember their name?
The Grossman brothers.
The Grossman brothers. Okay.
Yeah, but
he called me once. I play there once in a while, but it's like private gigs or something like that. And they get a lot of the internet people. You know what I mean? The people out there who have YouTube followers.
Right? Who aren't funny at all. Listen. I would just love to know why they won't book me. There's maybe they think I'm too expensive, which I'm not. I'm at the stage now where how much does it cost? When can you get here? You know what I mean? But I would love to know because I love working Philly. I worked at Philly Casino place, live casino.
Parx.
When we almost packed it and made a real lot of money. I'm like, how are they hiring me and this guy isn't?
Because Parx is run by a comedian, and he's the one who does the booking. It's not really it's not as corporate or money making, and he got good taste.
Jack, it's weird. I look at their billboard of the headshots of upcoming people. And I'd like to think we know
at
about.
Helium.
I have no idea. And it says star of so and so podcast, funny TikTok video. I mean, all right, they pull them in. I guess I don't know.
They
There's so many people in Philly that would come out.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Because when I work these other places, they're like an hour and a half out of town. People aren't going to drive that, especially not the people that were seeing me in 1985. You know.
How about the Reverend Bob Levy? I hear you gave him his name.
What
John
happened was
works
when Howard first called me up, I sent my records to him, and at some point, I guess him and Fred listened to the records, and they called me up and said, "Hey, why don't you come in and help us judge a talent show? We're doing a talent show over the telephone." I didn't know who this guy was, but I knew it was 75 Rockefeller Plaza. I'm going, because I had been turned on to him by Harry Montecruzos from Garvin's in Washington, D.C. He said, "Hey, this guy just got fired and he's going to NBC. I bet you guys would hit it off because he's crazy." So I go in.
They offered me Coke down there at that Garvin's,
Oh, God. So I went in there to do the show. And he sat there and laughed for 4 hours. And at the end of the day, Howard said, "Man, you're a lot of fun. Why don't you come back next week?" I said, "Sure." And he was promoting I still got 516-922 wine. That joke line has been going for 43, 44 years. I still got it's down to one line, but I just can't get rid of it. So he promoted it. "Hey, this is Jackie 922 wine, Martling." And then after like the second week I came on, he called me and he said, "Jackie, I got some bad news." I said, "Well, it was fun while it lasted, And he said, "I can't promote that joke line of yours anymore because it's so dirty. They got a lot of complaints." I said, "That's it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Fuck the joke line. Are you kidding?" And so I went in. So all of a sudden I realized I'm going in on Tuesdays. It's costing me, I don't know, gas wasn't so bad, but it's, like $25 or $30 to park. I got no money. I'm working at Governor's. We're hosting, but, and I got the bright idea. I called Mark from Rascals and said, "Listen, I'm working every Tuesday at the Stern Show and I have, an open field to promote. Why don't we have an open mic night? I'll host it. I'll promote it on the Stern Show. And you can give me money, even if nobody shows up. It's worth it to you just to hear, Jackie's going to be at Rascals in West Orange and Mark's a businessman, sure." So we started having open mic night there for, I don't know whether it lasted 6 months or a year or whatever. And it was like, open mic nights out of 15 people, you get like the same these 6, and then maybe these 6, and this guy come. And like the first week or two, this guy went up and he was so unfunny, but so absolutely really, really disgusting. And I'm a dirty joke teller, and this guy was disgusting.
You get one in every crowd like that, don't you? There's always one guy who goes over the top.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
The next week, I just said, and this is the Reverend Bob Levy, because I thought that was really teeing him up for somebody. And then 20 years later, I hear there's a comedian named Reverend Bob Levy. I'm like, fuck. I gave him that name. Isn't that funny? I think that's fun, and he's a good guy.
Oh yeah.
I knew him when he was from around where I was from. Him and Boss. Boss was Dennis. What was it?
Dennis Ross.
Dennis Ross. Do you remember Dennis Ross?
Big, huge, fat guy.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. He died, right?
Yeah.
Jackie, I work with him, and he asked for a stool on stage. He sat on a stool. Then he asked for a second stool. He had to sit on 2 stools.
Somebody told me he tried to swallow a midget, and he got.
He was from the same town that I was from, Cranford. Okay, Cranford, New Jersey, and he and Voss used to hang around with each other, and and then they showed me where to go. Okay,
that's cool. Yeah, I remember him being, a reasonable enough guy. There was another guy in Massachusetts that was like almost the same.
Rossi.
Yeah. Wow.
Did you sleep in the cellar?
Of course. Not with him.
No, not with him. But if you did a gig for him, that's where I slept. I remember sleeping in the side. I thought I was getting a room, and I got the cellar.
I literally pretty sure I brought a girl there, which is not. It's not the way to impress somebody,
He was like 300 pounds, and there were rumors that he would relieve himself in jars. Okay. And you would stumble over one every now and then, But he would, he was a great guy. He was up in Springfield, Massachusetts, I think that was. But I hear you knew and were good friends with Les Paul. Okay.
He was my guy from. It's so funny because I just texted back and forth with Carrie Ash just before I came on with you. Carrie Ash was married to Sam Ash, whose grandfather was Sam Ash, like in Sam Ash Musical Instruments.
Uh-huh.
And she married his grandson, who was in charge of the whole operation. She was great. And she would always say, you got to come see Les Paul. You got to come. And there's also a promoter that's still around, Adam Sands. He's a real good guy. He does the Cutting Room and Triad, and he's been promoting stuff forever. In fact, I just booked a show at the Triad Thursday night, May 4th, I think. It's only 100 seats, so it should be easy to fill up. And it's funny. People say, "Are you retired?" I say, "I'm retired until the phone rings." Now I got to get the Suffolk Theater on March 4th, so I'm kind of kicking ass a little.
You're a Renaissance man. You never retire.
Well, so this guy Adam Sands for years is telling me and Fred, you got to come see Les Paul. He's right at Iridium. He's right here in town. You would love him. We're like, yeah, right, yeah. And we're getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Like, we don't want to hear it. So then finally, I'm off the show. And Carrie calls me up and says, "You're coming to see Les Paul tonight. It's his 85th birthday. The Rolling Stones are going to be there. And if you don't come, I'm going to come to your apartment. I'm going to come drag you out by your ear and bring you." So me and Nancy are at my apartment. This is when the Iridium it wasn't at 51st and Broadway yet. It was at 63rd and Broadway at the bottom of I think the Empire Hotel or something.
Was it the Tuesdays or something like that?
No, it was Mondays. So she comes and picks us up at my apartment on 56th Street. And we go like 5 blocks, 5 short city blocks in her limo. And we go to see Les Paul. And Keith Richards was there in full battle array. I mean, with the dreadlocks and the colorful scarf. He was dressed as a rock star. He was there with his stepfather and his mother. Okay.
Wow.
Les Paul's 85th birthday. It's a tiny room. And I'm sitting there right on the side. Carrie had known him forever and ever because she knew everybody in the music business because, from Sam Ash. So this sounds made up, but we're sitting on the side and little Adam is walking Les Paul to the stage. And as they went past us, I swear on my mother, I heard him say to Adam, "Jackie the Joke Man's here tonight?" What? Because old people don't sleep. I know my father used to listen to Bob Grant for hours and hours and hours.
Yep.
They lie there and they don't sleep. So he loved the Stern Show. He knew the Stern Show inside out. So he goes up on stage and this is, I'm off the Stern Show almost. I don't think I was, this is the year 2000. So I hadn't quit drinking yet. I quit drinking like next year. So I'm still drinking. I got maybe 2 or 3 Budweisers in me, which is the perfect place. I just wish I could spend my whole life 2 Budweisers in. You know what I mean? You never, once you go past that, but that's like, peak. So he goes up on stage, he plays his opening song, and he says, "Now I hear this fella is in the crowd tonight, Jackie the Joke Man. Come on up here." And I'm like, woo, wow. So I got 2 beers in me. And I go up there, and I'm telling you, I don't know if this happens to you, but you meet people that are very similar to someone you know well, and that can either work positive or negative, but you like them right away or you never like them. And I go up on stage, and this little old man, thinning red hair, thick glasses, a little arthritic, very slight. It was my father. I can even choke up as I'm telling you the story. I'm looking at my father like, holy shit. And he goes, well, so, so you're a joke guy. I'm like, yeah, well, I can't tell you. I'm so excited to see you, blah, blah, blah. He says, well, let me see what you got. I said, no, look, Les, you really don't want to hear what I got. He said, no. I didn't know him. I didn't know he was a big dick joke guy. He told dirty jokes. And he was a real low-life, crazy man, but I did not know that. So here's this little old icon to the world, and Keith Richards is out in the audience. And so I said, you don't want to hear what I got? He says, whatever you got, we can handle it. What the fuck? And the place is jammed. I mean, jammed. Young people, old people, And I don't know what the joke was, but I told the funniest, dirtiest joke in my repertoire. And they went fucking nuts. He was like, he was shocked, laughing. He was thrilled. And I gave him a hug and said, thank you very much, And I went and sat down. And they cheered, right? And he was like, whoa. So he goes, he plays another song. He says, all right, we got another special guest. Keith Richards from Rolling Stones. Come on up, Keith. The first fucking thing that Keith Richards said, I swear on my mother, he said to Les, it's going to be a little tough to follow that bloke. So he plays a song.
And his father was there.
He plays a song or whatever, and the crowd goes nuts. And after this, I went to see Les probably 50 or 60 times. I was on stage with him. Wow. And all the times I ever went to see him, he never, ever had somebody on stage and then brought them back up on stage. No matter who it was, he just did not do that. So he's up on stage, and Keith Richards gets done with a song. He plays another song, and you could see there was something kind of like itching at him. And he said, Jackie the Joke Man, come back up here. Come back up here, because he's intrigued by this thing. So I go back up on stage, and he goes, so tell me what you do. Now, I listen to the show. Now, you're sitting there, you're writing stuff for him as you go along. Now, I got to get the order of this right. When I went back up on stage, well, it turns out that Keith Richards' mother, and I can't believe we all don't know this. Keith Richards' mother was a blues singer, a famous blues singer. I never knew that before.
Had no idea.
Which means she's been around the block, with the musicians, so she's no walked out of church. So the first thing I said was, I went up on stage and I said, I just want to apologize, Keith. I would have never told that off-color joke if I knew your mother was in the audience, which is just being with a wink and a nod. And he stood up and said, yeah, well, I'll tell you something about your mom. And I said to the crowd, I'm getting heckled by a Rolling Stone. How fucking cool is that? And they went nuts. Okay. So they calmed down, and Les starts saying, so you write these jokes, and how's that work exactly? And I said, listen, Les, but Les, not Mr. Les. We're old friends now. We've been on stage 3 minutes, twice. I said, listen, it's your 85th birthday. It's a big thing. This is your crowd. This is people. They love you. They're here to hear your music and watch you play. Maybe some are Stern Show fans. Maybe a lot of them aren't. Do your show. Entertain your people. And when you're done with the show, we'll go to the bar and we'll have a beer. And we'll talk about the Stern Show. And you know what? Maybe Keith will even join us, And he's rich. Maybe he'll even pay. and if he hadn't got any money on him, maybe he could trade some of those fucking beads he's got in his head. I am telling you, the roof came off the fucking place. And when they calmed down, I said to the crowd, now I'm fucking with a Rolling Stone. How fucking cool am I? And By the time I sat down, they were still screaming, and Les was laughing. We were so solidified.
At the Iridium? Is it at the Iridium or?
No, it was called the Iridium, but it was up underneath the Empire. I think it's the Empire Hotel. It was under Marlowe's. It was actually called Marlowe's.
And he played a place called Fat Tuesdays. That
was long before I knew him. He played for like 20 years or something. But
That's
then he was
where I
under
used to see him.
Marlowe's, and then he moved to Iridium pretty quick after that.
This probably isn't really a comedy question, but did you ever go see Woody Allen when he plays with the Monday nights at the?
You know what? When he played
at Michael's Pub.
Of course, I always wanted to. But I'll tell you a story about Woody Allen. He, you know, Pips, of course.
Yeah, we were going to ask you about Pips.
Well, Pips. It's so funny because last night we're watching an old Seinfeld, and it was the one where Freddie Stoller couldn't remember meeting Elaine, and it made her nuts, okay? And I said to Barbara, I said, Freddie Stoller is the guy who told me when I met him, he said, oh, you're the guy that can't work Pips because you drink too much.
He's blunt to the point.
I said, that place is the biggest hellhole of coke and heroin and drunks and lowlifes. And he said they wouldn't have you back because you were drunk. And I'm like, what kind of badge of courage is that? You can't work Pips. So Ray Garvey owned it by the end. And he was very ill. And the place was about to go under. And Ray Garvey was a cop, but he used to be assigned to guard Woody Allen movies. And Woody
he was in a bunch.
He put him little lines in the movies here and there. So him and Woody were friends. And then they made a movie to try and save. It was a movie about doing a show to save a club, but they were making the movie to try and save the club, which is just crazy. But they know everybody. So they got Pat Cooper and Colin Quinn and me and one of the pitchers from the Mets and I forget who else, but it was crazy. And I was so thrilled to be part of this. And we're all going to do our acts. And it was so funny because Pat Cooper went up and they're trying to set up the shot and he just ragged on everybody for 20 minutes.
He was actually like that. He was like that, wasn't he?
Yeah. And
I mean,
you
saw what you got. You got what you saw,
right.
You know.
They said, all right, Pat, we're ready to roll. I said, what are you talking about? I just did it. I'm not doing it again. They said, no, we weren't ready. So he's not in the movie. So it's so funny. So one by one, everybody's going up. And the guy who's the director of photography on this movie, I think it's called The Last Laugh. It's on the web, you know. The guy who shot the movie was actually the camera operator for Woody Allen for like 20 years. This guy, Michael Green, great guy. And he would actually sit there and play chess with Woody in between takes when they were making a Woody Allen movie. And this one, Howard was really going off on Woody Allen all the time and on Soon-Yi.
Oh,
and Michael said they'd be playing chess and Woody'd say, what were they saying about me today? So Michael Green gets Woody Allen to do this movie. So Woody actually saw me go up there and do my 15 minutes of fucking horror, you know. And after I was done, he told me, he said it was so great. Michael said, so Woody, what'd you think of Jackie? And Woody Allen said, he's very funny. He's not my cup of tea. And the best thing of all, when the movie's just about done, they told me, go up and tell a bunch of dirty jokes because we want to shoot it through the window outside. So you're looking in through Pip's window and you see a guy on stage telling jokes and we're going to run the credits. And I said, okay. So I go up there and I start rattling off these jokes and like 3 or 4 of the guys from The Sopranos come in, you know, like Sharippa and John, the cook or whatever he was, and Tony Sirico, who literally spent time in prison for murder. You know, in real life.
Yeah, he was bad boy.
Rest in peace, Tony. I loved him. You know? But I come off stage and they came in just as I'm telling my jokes. So they saw me do 15 minutes of crazy dirty jokes. And I come off the stage and I come over and say, hey, Tony, it's nice to meet you. I'm a big fan. And he goes, you know, Jack, you're really fucking scary. I said, what? He says, those jokes. Jesus Christ, you're fucking scary. I said, Sirico, you went to jail for murder. I'm telling dirty jokes. I'm scary. I'm sorry, you're fucking scary.
And that's what he.
How perfect is that? You know.
A couple years ago, Wid and I did Danny Aiello's room in Hoboken.
Yeah.
And
upstairs in Hoboken. Did you do that place for him?
I never did that room, but Danny Aiello and me were pretty good friends. I got a scene in my reel. The last scene in my acting reel is with Danny. He's a great guy. Great guy.
I talked to him for hours about the old songs. He liked that I knew the old song. You know, I was throwing them out there and stuff like that. So I had a very, very good time with him. He was very nice to me. He was, you know, and a great guy.
One of the last times I saw him, you guys might know this. He was working on a one-man show, a musical about Al Capone in prison. And I was going to meet with this guy, Ronald Luxembourg, because I was supposed to take over Joey Reynolds' show that he had at the bottom of the NASDAQ, right on Times Square. It was turning over because the guys that were working with him, you know, I thought you were buying the advertising. I thought, you know, one of these show business things. So they're thinking of giving it to me. So I'm going to meet with Ron. And he said, well, at first I got to meet Danny Aiello and a couple of his guys at Patsy's. You know, Patsy's, the Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
Right in my apartment. He said, come to the meeting and then we'll go to lunch. So I go there and Ron's there with Danny Aiello. And they tell me they're working on a musical about Al Capone in prison. And I was sitting next to the guy. I didn't know it, but he was the guy that they had hired to do the music. And I said, he's going to do a musical about Al Capone in prison? Is this true? He says, I guess. He said, I just spent the last 3 days writing a song called Syphilis.
That's what I wish.
I swear to you. I could not make that up. My God.
Oh, man.
It's rated VD.
That's hitting below the belt.
I think it might have gone far enough that it might even be on in the Google, you know, like, but of all the absurd.
They were going to do because he was in jail here in Philadelphia. He got caught with a gun at the train station, and he did a year in prison here in Philadelphia. And the prison's still there, and they preserved his cell and everything, and put everything in it.
Now, this is before show business.
No, this was after they had that big meeting of all the heads of state up in New York. You remember that? And all the criminals got together. I forget.
Oh, that's right. It's in a.
And
I vaguely remembe that.
On the way back, he didn't want to get killed because they were going to kill him. So he made a deal with he got caught with a gun. So they put him in, but he had girls and food and
Jackie, you can tour this prison. It's really neat. It's called the Eastern State Penitentiary. It's still there. They have movies and festivals and tours. So I go with WID a couple years ago for the prison tour, and she shows us Al Capone's cell, the yard, the cafeteria, and all that. So she gets done in an hour tour, and she says, "Any questions?" And he says, "Is it true they didn't give the prisoners chocolate?" And she goes, "Why?" He goes, "So they wouldn't break out." I'm rubbing my head. I'm going like that.
That is so WID.
I walked into it. Okay, how can I do it? I've never,
Then the next day, he and I went to the Franklin Institute, it's a kids museum. They have a giant
heart there,
50-foot size heart that you can crawl through, little kids. So he and I actually do it. We go crawl through this giant recreation of a human heart. We get down the end, and a really cute little African-American girl, little yellow dress.
Little girl comes up and says,
she's to him. She goes, Mister, is it crowded in there? And she points to the giant heart, and he goes, yeah, it's congested.
I said, that heart's congested. And, to the little girl, and but yeah, I mean, it's opportunities like that.
Hey, do you know the story of the world famous heart surgeon that passed away? And at his funeral, they had a huge heart made out of roses. And at the very end of the service, the heart opened up and his casket went into the heart, and then the heart closed back up. And one of the guys sitting there at the funeral starts to giggle. And the guy next to him says, "What's so funny?" He says, "I'm thinking about my funeral. I'm a gynecologist."
There was an episode of Family Guy.
They're going to put you in a box either way, okay?
There was an episode of Family Guy where they're telling jokes like this, and they went on a trip to find out who's writing all these jokes. Just very interesting, like where these jokes actually came from. Is it several people, us, comedians just.
I think they found dirty jokes in Pompeii, when they dug up Pompeii.
Oh, hey.
I'm sure the hieroglyphics.
This was a discussion. We used to always get drunk and have this discussion at the Fort Lauderdale comic strip because all the comics came. There was always a different, 3 guys coming in, 3 guys going out. There's so many stories. It's so funny because nobody's really written a book or told too many stories about the Fort Lauderdale comic strip because so many people would be in trouble with their families, their wives, whatever. But it was kind of a sour thing because Richie Tinkin, rest his soul, who owned the comic strip, opened the comic strip in Fort Lauderdale, and an old friend of his from the Bronx, Joe Mullen, ran it. And then after like 10 years or 5 years, Richie found out the guy had been robbing him blind the whole time. One of his best friends, which it's happened to all of us, happened to me recently. But that kind of soured the whole thing. So nobody really talked or told stories about the place that much. But
they skimmed it out of business, huh?
Yeah, it's just that's how it works. If you're doing something that's cash, well, we talk about 2 seconds before that because
Woody Woodbury.
Woody Woodbury used to come over there and steal jokes from me, and I'd go see him where he worked and steal jokes from him. He's like, he's 98 and still doing shows out in California.
Unbelievable. He used to have like a club that you could join, like, alcohol is great for you. And he'd have
it was a drinking club. I still have my card. It was like
I have that same, yeah. I mean, it came with an instruction book, right?
Right. And he sat there at the piano with a fucking bourbon glass, the size of a dwarf. He was such a character, such a great character. And we wrote back and forth. It was so
mean, that was a style for a while. There were a couple people, the 2 women who did it, who would sit at the piano, like Pearl
Williams and Belle Barth.
Yeah, that Belle Barth, and they were both like organ comedians. Like we have guitar comedians. They were B3 organs.
Belle Barth played the accordion. Pearl Williams played the piano. She had all the stuff is on the web. It's so funny. Pearl Williams weighed like 400 pounds, and her album was called A Trip Around the World Is Not a Cruise. And they said that she'd sit at the piano, 400 pounds, sit at the piano, and for her finale, she'd make the piano disappear. But their jokes were so great, and Pearl Williams, they would do jokes, only instead of saying pussy, they would say knish. I've been telling jokes on Mark Simone, like I'm a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, and I hate Trump, but me and Mark Simone go back 40 years to the old days of the other end and the whatever it's called, the place in the Village when I used to host shows there, and I tell jokes on his show, and I just refer to it as a knish. And it's so funny because you just can, you know.
Give me a little knish.
I don't know what a knish is to just know, you know, do the math. You know,
But it was Yiddish, so it was cool.
It's like a Jewish pastry.
Yeah, it's a potato thing. It's a potato with pastry around it.
But what I was trying to say was we would sit around and discuss because we would all, you know, I told all my jokes and everybody knew all the jokes and we sit there and tell jokes and tell jokes. I never met anybody who claimed or even claimed to know anybody who claimed to have written any of the classic jokes. You know, we're just going to ride them into town and try and get girls, or Dirty Johnny, or any of those classic jokes. They've been around since the beginning of time, and I've watched them evolve. I've seen, you know, and I've gone back and found jokes in the Gershon Legman books.
Yeah,
I'm a student of this stuff. I mean, I love that all of a sudden the world is up in arms because they found out that going back to the 50s, that priests have been fooling around with the boys. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong? Go back and look at a joke book from the year 1200. 2/3 of the jokes in there are about the bishop buggering the altar boys and the altar boys buggering the priests. This shit's been going on since the beginning of time. Like, oh, they're doing what? Yeah, you're putting a man and another man in a house and locking the door and say, don't do anything wrong. You know, like, you idiots. But these jokes have been around since the beginning of time.
The farmer's daughter could have been the Pharaoh. The farmer's daughter could have been the Pharaoh's daughter. You know, it could have.
Yeah,
they went back. So
Dolly Parton, or the jokes that were about Elizabeth Taylor, or the jokes that were, you know, I hate like the aristocrats. Like, I hate jokes that get referred to by their punchline.
Okay.
Because it destroys everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell
like
you.
Moisha Diana's a jerk off. You remember that?
You know,
the parrot.
I know the aristocrats joke isn't the telling of it because it's just your examples. But the other version they tell in the film about the three elderly ladies are auditioning for the talent agent, and they do everything beautiful, and the tears are in his eyes. And the punchline was, "My God, what a great act! What are you called?" And she says, "Like the motherfucking assholes."
Right, right.
It's the opposite.
Right.
That's funnier.
Gotta love. But so if you know the way these things work, I got told a joke in 1979 by I think Adam Leslie told me this joke, and I just loved it. And I had just gotten to be friends with Jerry Cooney, and it was a fighting joke. And actually I told the joke at the Don, what's his name with the hair?
Don King.
The Don
King.
With
Cooney, tell people who Cooney was.
Jerry Cooney was the Great White Hope. He was he was a boxer that was really doing well, like in 1980. I don't know how far he got, but I think he
hung around the comedy club, and he had a club of his own right out there on Long Island, on Farmingdale, right?
Well, the club, he didn't own it. His brother was half owner of the club where me and Minervini literally started comedy on Long Island. A place called Cinnamon, which is where I actually recorded my first album. But so let me tell you, so this joke, it's 1958, and it's the heavyweight championship of the world. And it's Ingemar Johansson and Floyd Patterson. And the announcer comes out, walks in the middle of the ring, and the microphone comes down. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Madison Square Garden for the championship boxing match of the world. In this corner, weighing 220 pounds, in the black shorts, the challenger from Sweden, Mr. Ingemar Johansson." Everybody, yeah. And in this corner, we have the champion, weighing 215 pounds, in the white trunks, the champion, the great Floyd Patterson. Yeah. Before we begin the bout, we have to sing the national anthem, the lovely Kate Smith. And the guy sitting ringside says, Kate Smith, that fat cunt, she sucked every cock on the East Coast. And the announcer goes, nevertheless. So it turns out that joke is a classic that's been around for all time. Okay. I had no idea. I told that joke at the roast, but I bombed. And number one, it was way too long a joke for a roast. And like an idiot, I'm at the podium. But when it was time for the guy to yell that thing off mic, I bent down off mic. But if still, of course, it wasn't loud enough to come out over the microphone. But I got down off the podium and I yelled, Kate Smith. And as I started that line, I was looking into the eyes of Dionne Warwick. So the joke bombs. So a guy wrote a play called George M. Tonight. It's a one-man play about the whole life of George M. Cohan.
Okay.
One actor, he does the whole thing, and it was a great play. And I went to see the play because I was friends with this guy.
Georgie M., right?
George M. Tonight.
Oh, okay.
So somewhere in the middle of the play, George M. Cohan says, and then tonight we have to sing for you Mary McDonald. And the guy in the balcony yells, Mary McDonald, she's a whore. Nevertheless, I almost shit myself. So after the play, I said, Chip, I can't believe there was no jokes in that play except for one. And the one joke that he used is one of my favorite jokes. And he said, Jackie, I got to tell you the truth. I don't know if George M. Cohan ever said that. That's the only thing I put in the play myself. I put that joke in the play because that joke was told to my family. We were good friends with Carol Channing. And when I was a kid, Carol Channing told that joke to my family at dinner. And she said one of her favorite jokes because she had been told that joke by her grandmother. Okay, so are you counting the generations here? It turns out that joke has been around for all time, and it keeps popping up. I saw it in Louis B. Mayer owned a chain of theaters in Connecticut, and and Charlotte.
He's from Canada.
Charlotte's going to sing "She's a Whore," nevertheless. And they said, I've never seen this, but supposedly Gene Rayburn was doing one of the game shows, and he had on some other celebrity, like not Bob Crane, but some other celebrity, where they have a celebrity and a street person. And they asked her something, and she responded, nevertheless. And the two of them hit the floor. They went down. And that's been around forever. And Alec Baldwin recently put out a book called Nevertheless. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, is that a coincidence? And I read the whole book. And at the very end, he said, well, the name of this book, and he does a version of that joke, which is just classic. But, I hate saying to somebody, have you ever heard Nevertheless? Because, I went out and I did an episode of Leverage. And after we got done with taping the show, it was Timothy Hutton's show. And we're sitting around, and I told him that joke, and he almost did a fucking backflip. He laughed so hard, It's
Was that the one where you were a clerk, or you were a clerk?
Yeah.
I was watching that with two
clerk in the basement.
Yeah, I was watching that with I had no idea you were going to be on it, and I fell off my chair. It was so funny. I mean, to see you in a serious role. I mean, I saw that come out. Amelia, did you know that Les Paul was a comedian at one time? Did he ever tell you that?
He fooled around. He told, I'm very good friends with Willie Nelson, and we actually interviewed him for. I got a documentary coming out. We finally got it distributed. It'll be out in a couple months. It's not streaming yet, But we went and spoke to Willie Nelson to get him for the documentary. But the year before, I'm good friends with him and good friends with his daughter. And I said, I really want somebody to videotape me and Willie telling jokes. You know, we still email jokes back and forth constantly. And so I went to see him, and she turned off the air conditioner in the bus and locked the door. And me and Willie sat there for 10 or 15 minutes, and she videotaped us. So we're telling jokes, but we're talking. And, you know, I played guitar and told songs. I sang songs and wrote songs and told jokes in between. I did that for forever and ever. And he's telling me about, I used to play with Ray Price. I was the bass player in Ray Price's band. And, you know, I used to go out before the band with my guitar and sing a couple songs and tell a few jokes. I said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, that's what I did forever now. I'm no Willie Nelson, but that's what I did. And we're laughing. He had such a great sense of humor. And he told me that Roger Miller was the funniest guy that ever walked. And, you know, we had just such a great
conversation.
Yeah, he said, Roger Miller said, he
wrote a musical. He had Roger Miller, and he was on all those shows during the 60s. You know, that was a monster hit, that one that Roger Miller had.
King of the Road.
King of the Road, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I identified.
Oh, he was, you know, a real character. And there was another guy, little Johnny, little Willie, little Jimmy, somebody.
No, little Jimmy Dickens.
Little Jimmy Dickens. Yeah.
Like Willie would go on and on about these guys. Just so much fun. Yeah, Les Paul was Red Hot Red for a couple of years. Do you know? I don't know if you know.
Was he a clown too? A rodeo clown for a while?
I don't know. I've never really read his autobiography. I don't even know if there is one. It's a shame I don't know that.
Would you admit that?
I came into it late, like from the time he was 85. So we were friends until he died, you know. But I went down there. I lived on 56th and Broadway, and he was 51st and Broadway. So I go down there, and I got up on stage with him so many times, and we would have so much, just crazy. And I don't know if you all my stories lead to so much. So he had a great guitar player, and at some point, after about the second or third time I was there, I went in the green room and I said, listen, you guys are world-class guys. I mean, Frank Vignola was Les Paul's guitar player, which is like being Dolly Parton's tit stand-in. You know, like, I'm like, does it bother you that I come up and tell these jokes? And he said, are you kidding? You bring so much energy to the stage. We live for that. It's great. And then like 2 more times I went up and said, listen, by any chance you smoke pot? And Frank said, are you crazy? So I gave him a big manila envelope full of my homegrown. So now we're best friends. And then one night on my way home, on my way into the city, I wrote this crazy song. And I called him up and said, listen, I either wrote just the world's craziest, either world's best song or the world's worst song. I want to send you an MP3 of what I recorded in the car. He said, and I said it to him. He said, that's the funniest thing I ever heard. And we recorded it. And when we got done, he said, you're so much fun. Do you have any other songs? I said, I just happen to have 100 of them from the 70s when I couldn't get across the street. So we actually made an album of my songs, and it's
the Off-Hour Rockers.
No, this is it was called Jackie's Music Cunt.
Is there an opening for me?
I don't know if you've ever heard the song, but if you haven't, you'll go out the song. I'm smoking pot. I got my dick out. Have you ever heard that?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, you know, that's how I wound up doing that with the guys I met through Les Paul, you know, and he just loved dirty jokes, and he was just crazy. I actually gave him a joke after I went up with him that first time. We instantly had a bond.
Uh-huh.
The next Monday, I was at Fiorello's on Broadway eating with a girl that I was crazy about, but we were just pals. And I don't know if you know this, but as old as he was, he made his band rehearse every Monday afternoon. They would rehearse in the afternoon, and then they'd do 2 shows every Monday night. And when I met him, he was already 85. So they rehearse in the afternoon and play 2 shows at night, which is I won't even do 2 shows, right? So I said to my friend Lisa, I said, I think Les Paul is over there rehearsing the band right across the street. Come on, I'll introduce you to him if he's there. And I had come up with an idea for him. I don't know. I'm sure I just read it somewhere, but it's the right joke for the right place. And we went over there and I walked up and she was beautiful. I said, Les, remember last Monday night? Oh, yeah, Jackie's great to see you again. This is my friend Lisa France, blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, I got a joke for you to use in your act if you want to use it. Because he had a female bass player.
Okay.
She was from Australia and she was so cute. I don't even know if she was playing with him yet, but it wound up being so perfect. But he loved to play sexy songs or tell, and flirt with the women in the audience. He'd blow his nose on a handkerchief and then hand it to the girl and say, I'll see you later, stuff like that. Great, great, stupid stuff. And I gave him a line. So after the bass player would flirt with him, he would say to the crowd, I feel like a condemned building with a new flagpole. And he used that every night for the rest until he died. He used that.
I salute that. I salute that.
Is that, and it's the perfect dirty, but not dirty. You know what I mean? Like
it's right. Oh, it's a colloquial thing to say, like I was there one night and Slash was there. The guy,
Guns N' Roses,
for Guns N' Roses, and he's tuning his guitar, and he's taking his time tuning his guitar. Les goes over to him, takes the guitar, goes, give me that, and he tunes it like in a second and gives it back. Now play like that, which he was half serious about it because
I met Slash used to be there once in a while. I followed. Merle Haggard on stage. I followed Slash. I followed Tommy. What's his name? The one person I never saw on stage, I was never at Les Paul's with, was Paul McCartney. And he was there a lot of times, and I just never caught him. And I used to make Les tell the story because Les told me that Paul McCartney told him this story standing on Les's stage during Les's show. He said, Paul McCartney said that when he was in a band, they went to audition and in England, and it was, him and John Lennon or whoever, and they went for a gig and the guy said, listen, I don't like your material. Go home and learn some Les Paul songs. And they went home and learned some Les Paul songs, came back and played them, and he got the gig. Which,
How High the Moon.
Even if he made it up, even Paul McCartney going to the trouble of making it, you know what I mean? It was great.
I heard that story before. With they told him to listen to something like How High the Moon, because they thought that I think it was Decca Records. They went to Decca Records and. That's what they got turned down. They said, well, we don't like that sound. And, and the rest is history, I guess. Man, Les was, he was an engineer. He was an engineer. And him and Tony Bon Jovi got along really well because they would talk.
Les invented reverb and then put it in the brick, put it in the brick in his wall for like 5 years and never, Is Tony still around?
Oh, yeah. He's down in Fort Lauderdale. And, he was just up here and he's, he's living a life of Tony. He's, he's. When
are we going to do that Christmas cartoon?
That's right. The Christmas tree.
The Christmas tree. I think he sold that to somebody. He'd been beating that one to a horse, man. People don't believe in Jesus anymore, and it's going to have to be changed around the Kwanzaa or something. But no, he's doing good down there.
You got.
I met a million people who I had to act subservient to because you couldn't be like I was there, but this was at the recording studio. I took you there a couple times too,
Yeah,
and
PowerPoint, Powerhouse,
Power Station.
Power Station.
Yeah, and they even had a group named after him and everything. I talk to Tony all the time. He's, he's out wheeling and dealing. He'll always be. He's very inspirational. Okay, he's always on the phone.
There's nothing better than these characters that we meet along the way.
It-
There was a guy named Frankie Ray Pirelli, who just wrote me a letter at the Stern Show, and I answered, and we wound up being pals till the day he died. And you can't even make it up. He was friends with Lenny Bruce, and he had an all-female orchestra that he managed, and an all-midget audience that he managed. And for a while, he managed Hunts Hall, and him and his partner Aldo and what were they called? Alto and Ray or whatever. They were on Ed Sullivan a couple times. And he was partners with Shecky Green in a comedy club in New Orleans until the day they found a dead body in the green room. I mean, and this guy,
you don't mess with those. They killed Kennedy. Those New Orleans people.
They don't fuck around. And this guy, character. And once in a while, I just get in the mail an envelope full of his memorabilia shit, and it'll be old 8x10s and menus and stuff from Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and it's just phenomenal crap. I still, I go through it and I'm like, I can't, and I know he had a whole house full of it, and he passed away, and I have no idea what happened to him. Hey, did you ever hear this guy Cliff Nesteroff?
Yeah, he wrote the book on comedy.
Oh, so you guys have seen that? Because I met him on John what do you call it, show, and I said, Cliff, I got a guy you gotta talk to. This guy Frankie Ray Pirelli. He said Frankie, and he had already interviewed him 3 times. And I'm talking about that is as deep into the annals of show business go. That's crazy.
I'm a collector. I have everything. You know what I mean? But mine is a little messier than yours. I wouldn't. My 6 to 60s are in boxes with with my man.
My shit. Don't be fooled. My shit is laying around, and I got a frightening amount of and so much. I have all the lines I ever wrote for Howard, and all those days things would happen. I'd put something down or save something and put it in the. There's so much there. I got so many autographed notes that are signed by celebrities. I have all the original scripts from the bits that we did because, and they're all in Howard's handwriting because we'd sit there and me and Fred would toss ideas and Howard would write them down until we had a script. And at the end of the day, nobody, it was going in the garbage. So I just brought it home
Well, when I went to see you at Howard's show, you were writing down on little pieces of paper, and then you would hold them up or hand them to him or put them in a thing like that. But by the end of the show, the place was littered like it was a ticker tape parade. It was like I thought that was the coolest because my act. I throw everything around.
I saved the notes that he read, but whatever he didn't read, I crumpled up. And, sometimes I'd be sitting up to my thighs and fucking,
Yeah, that was the greatest. And, and you wouldn't see it on on the video or hear it on the thing, but it was the constant.
It was the proverbial cutting room floor. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Great.
And, Dennis Wolfberg, because he lost his notebooks. Okay, somebody stole his notebooks and his clothes and everything. It was because of him. I didn't write in notebooks. I always wrote on pieces of paper that were around the club, and if I lost those, I only lost those, and everything else was safe. And I wouldn't have a book to lose. But because of that, I have flyers from every old place that I used to play, every the Penny Arcade, and anything in these obscure clubs, and you can't believe how the fashions change and how cheap some of the things were back in the day.
The old days, Jerry Stanley and what's his name?
Jerry Stanley. I still talk to Jerry Stanley. He was one of the first promoters out there who would take and make the 3-man shows in bars and restaurants.
Right. I worked a lot of, I worked all those, and I had a couple of those because there was a guy named Ron Richards who used to do shows, but he had an amplifier and a mic. And if he had more shows, he'd say, Jackie, I know you got an amplifier and a mic. I'll give you, and he gave me Mustache Pete's. And I still have the book that has the bookings in his handwriting, and then it segues to my handwriting. And, you see Wolfberg, Seinfeld, Overton, Reiser.
Yeah.
Funny, everybody's last name. And then it would say Jackie. Everybody else, Murphy, Seinfeld, Overton.
Well, you were always, I have right here, I don't know if I know you can see it. It's the famous, which was ahead of all marketing in the whole world. This is before computers, okay? This is before you had use your finger, okay? Dial a joke. And these were stickers, like, I guess that's what you call them. Yeah. But Jackie would challenge you to see how high in the men's room of a look right there.
That's what's the
yes, lady, Jack, and they were sticky. So you would have to get up so people wouldn't take it down. You would go into a men's room or into a thing, and you would put it as high as you could, right? And so people it would stay there and not be.
You know where I used to put them when I pull up to the toll booth? To a toll booth.
So you started that trend.
I put them on the remember the big vagina where you put the quarters?
Sure.
But this, it was funny when I saw that 516-922-WINE. Before the show, I was thinking, what was the number from that? And that number came up, and the other one was 1-800-540-BAG. Like that was the number on the Stern show to call for
1-800-BAG-5040.
That's it. Back
and then
what was that for?
1-800-52 Stern.
Right.
Frank Zappa was supposed to come on the show, and he died. And at the time, Howard was peddling one of those stupid videos, a pay-per-view or one of those U.S. open source or something, and he'd sell the VHSs. And he'd do the commercials every 5 seconds. Whenever we did one of those shows, guys would be like, oh, Christ, we're going to have to listen to him promote every 5 seconds. So Zappa dies. So his widow comes on the show. And I wrote this line, and she peed her pants laughing. Howard said, now, I don't forget her name, like, hey, Charlotte, is it true that Frank's last words were, please call 1-800-50? She went crazy because she was Frank Zappa's widow, God, just great stuff. Holy shit.
For Christmas, somebody got me Robert Blake's biography, and it's autographed inside. It was like $20. But when he was on the Stern show, he was discussing a movie he made about the mass murder in New Jersey, where the guy ran off and started a whole new identity, and they didn't get him for like 30 years.
John List.
Well,
okay.
Well, Robert Blake was promoting the show or promoting the movie on Stern show, and it's a sad story. Like it came from abuse, it's just a horrible life. And Stern says to him, "You're in this movie with Valerie Perrine. Is she like a C cup?" He just totally ignored this horrible story.
Sometimes that's shock value. That works.
I remember Blake being on the show so vividly because when he first came in, he sat down and Howard started with the same thing he would say to everybody. And, hey, how you doing? How big's your penis? What got laid, blah, blah, blah. And this guy went from 0 to 60, in seconds.
Yes.
Got incensed. He got up and he said, I don't listen. I'm not your dancing monkey. I don't listen to that crap. I'll come right over this console. I'll beat you. And in 2 seconds, Ronnie and Gary come into the studio and they're behind him. And this guy was out of his mind. And I remember saying to myself, holy Christ, that guy's going to murder somebody someday. And then he did. He murdered
the child actors, you got to watch. That's what it probably stemmed from. He was a child actor and got his way all those years and became a bad adult. Because
or else everybody had their way with him one way or another.
He was, he was he was in more than just one or two movies. He was like, he was the go-to kid.
Oh yeah, yeah.
At Warner
It's
Brothers.
funny. I never did before, but in the last couple of months, I think twice, all of a sudden, Alfalfa has popped up in a couple movies. When he's a little bit older.
The Christmas.
Like, God damn, that's Alfalfa.
He was in the one where the Defiant Ones, okay, where he where Tony Curtis and who's Sidney Poitier when they're chained together.
Oh, really?
The Defiant Ones. Alfalfa is he doesn't have any lines. He is the dog wrangler for when they've got the dogs out looking for Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier. And there's Alfalfa. He's there for the whole movie, and all he does is listen to the radio. They don't give him a line. And that was a big-time movie. I mean, I think that was one of his last, too, because he was in that business of,
extra
deer hunting, and, he rented out dogs, and so that's why they had him in the movie. But how about Darla Hood? Did you ever see what happened to her?
I remember I've read about all this stuff years ago, but I don't remember what happened to her.
What? She became a singer. She was on she had her own show, and Mel Torme would come on. People would legit singers would come on, and she was so cute still in her adulthood. But she almost could sing. You know what I mean? I don't think it lasted too long. It was in the early 50s. So,
yeah, at some point, John Ferrantino, for some reason, he was in Dallas a million years ago when it wasn't common to be down there, and he went and he met with Spanky, who I guess was just an incredible asshole.
He was a car salesman at the end.
Is that right?
He sold cars here in Philadelphia on Car Row or whatever it is. We got tons of car things, but he was a big time car salesman for a while, and he was always on the Mike Douglas show. Okay, because that was here in Philly. And who's the guy who wrote Evergreen and the Phantom of the
Paul
little
Paul Williams.
Paul Williams. Paul Williams says in his movie that they made about Paul Williams, which is a great movie, that the best Coke in the world was in Philadelphia at that time, and so everybody wanted to be on that show. That's why John Lennon came here. That's why different people who like to indulge. That's why they came to.
I spent an entire afternoon. In Easter time, 1980, I spent an entire Sunday afternoon sitting in the living room with Paul Williams and his wife and Rodney Dangerfield with a mountain of Coke on the.
So, yeah, I mean, that was, he would get all sorts of movie stars to get out there. The people who he had on his show were,
Jackie, I read in the Doug Kenny biography, like National Lampoon, and he wrote Caddyshack. I swear it's in that book, but they mentioned when they were casting Caddyshack, Rodney was a champ in it, but they said that the other person they eyed up was Don Rickles. And I think that would have been just as funny with Don Rickles in Caddyshack.
To me, that's one of those things where I can't even do that math. I can't imagine somebody, they're like, can you imagine Gary Cooper and Gone with the Wind? You just can't do that math. You know what I mean? Like,
how about Dangerfields had the band, right? And because I had so many props, okay, the drummer couldn't be up there, okay? And so the drummer would buy me drinks all night because he's going, oh, man, I love it when you play here. So I think more than me being funny, I think it was me, the drummer put in a good word for me. But I remember being there, and Red Fox and Rodney were in the, how the place was set up? It had like a couple levels, okay, that you can go upstairs, and there was a stairwell and everything. they cursed each other out in every N-word, every curse that you could imagine. And they just kept it up and kept it up and kept it up. And it was funny to hear these guys, but they had nothing to say to each other except insults. It was refreshing. I'm sure that they were both,
Jack, I have a question for you. Is that story true with Red Fox when he went to the casino and he walked out and there was no audience, but the band was playing?
The
theme.
the band played that, and Fred looked at the audience and saw that there was 10 people in there, in Atlantic City, and he said,
"Fuck you," and that's that.
And the band picked up,
and he left, and they're still playing Quincy Jones, man.
I heard that. I know. I went to see him. Me and Minervini were actually doing coke in the bathroom with Slappy White, who was the opening act. And Fox came out to this packed, like it was almost like a dance club, just I'm sure he's doing it for the money. And he came out and everybody said, do Fred Sanford, and which annoyed him. Just like people telling Jimmy, what's his face, to say Dynamite. That's the last thing he wants to do. He said, fuck Fred Sanford. For 5 years I was Red Fox. I ain't fucking Fred Sanford. I'm Red Fox. But meanwhile, that was his real name, Fred Sanford, in real life. But he turned around and did his whole act for the 2 or 3 piece jazz group that was there. He did his whole act to the band with his back to the crowd. I'll never forget that. It was, it was actually fun, Oh, let me look.
Well, look at that test pattern. Beautiful.
I'm looking to see if I know Barbara was supposed to have her relatives come over today. They're not here yet. So
Sherman Hemsley tried to do comedy for a while because at the end of his career, he lost his savings, and he appeared twice in Philadelphia here. And I went to go see him.
Yeah.
Nobody showed up. I go, where's Sherman Hemsley? And she said, he's laying over there on the bench in a booth, and he was sleeping. And Jackie, one time in Philly, they booked a one-nighter with Frank Gorshin from The Riddler. And I was the opening act, and I went down to it, and I had just a generic, there was an older crowd. A lot of people didn't really remember him from Batman. Of course, we all do. But in the middle of his act, he did an impersonation of Frederick March's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he demanded a green spotlight on his face, and he didn't get it. And this is 15 minutes of his act, and he said, fuck this, unprofessional, and stormed off.
He was like, I was in a movie, a great one called Potluck, and it was such an odd movie. It was about a guy, a gang, almost like a private eye and his sidekick and his mole. And it was the private eye, and his sidekick was a little Chinese guy, and he had a sexy girl. And then the mobsters in this movie are watching these old movies with them in it. But then in real life, he's in the movie, and the gangster has now become the old gangster is now Frank Gorshin, and his mole is Sylvia Miles, and his right-hand guy is what was his name? That famous Chinese actor that was in every fucking movie you've ever seen. Right. And all of a sudden, at some point, you go, "That's the same guy every time." And me and him got wrong.
Same guy.
But but Gorshin was great, and my role was to come out of the crowd and insult Sylvia Miles. And I said, "Are you sure?" And they said, "No, just do it. Just wing it." And I came out of there, and I insulted the piss out of this old broad, and she got really pissed off. She went to the director, and I'm like, "Hey, that's what they told me to do." And Gorshin pulled me to the side. He said, "I wanted to tell that cunt something like that." A big hug, Yeah,
he was a big star with the Playboy clubs. He was like would play all the Playboy clubs, because, and I heard that from people who would book him that he was like the number one guy for those things. You know what I
It's
mean?
very
Like,
believable because he was so talented. There's a lot of guys that made their living going from Playboy, long before the people were going from improv to improv to improv. The Playboy clubs in the early 70s, they'd be packed. They'd be packed with all Chinese guys, but who knew that at least the audience would be full, and these guys are, good food, good money. There's always girls, booze, drugs,
he could sing, and those impressions. I mean, who did a better, Burt Lancaster than him? He did like Burt Lancaster and so many others that it was.
That's wonderful. You see the old Ed Sullivan shows. The old Ed Sullivan shows when he was on, he was a killer.
And he was in 12 Monkeys. Did you see him in 12 Monkeys?
I don't remember.
But sometimes on Saturday, right? Oh, sorry.
In 12 Monkeys, he lets his false teeth come out and then shoots them back in. He said that would be for effect. Okay, they did that here in Phil.
That's when he was filming that. That's when I opened for him.
That's that. But he was something else.
Oh.
I mean, he was also in those beach movies and everything.
Oh yeah, like with the Frankie Avalon and Annette.
Yeah, and Annette. I mean, he was in those as as a character actor. Did he? I guess he did some.
He did a George Burns one-man show.
That's what he wanted to do. The George Burns one-man show. I gotta get.
Oh, he's sorry, Jack.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, we have been yapping for forever, and but let's wrap it up. We'll promote Jackie's book here.
I'd say let's wrap it up, but I'm ready to do it again anytime.
You got it. Whenever you, yeah, it's definitely.
All right. Yeah, I'm here. I mean,
show them.
Right there. Okay. Here.
Go to the phone.
You
right
do
there.
it.
Right there. Check out Jackie's book. Check out Jackie on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram.
Where else, Jack?
Right, the book is Joke Man, Bow to Stern, but you have to include Joke Man because if you just Google Bow to Stern, you get a 7th grade sailing manual. So how about Joke Man, Bow to Stern? I'm on TikTok / Jackie Martling. And I actually had one joke that so far has 1.1 million views that doesn't do anything for me except give me bragging rights. But it was a classic joke. And was
this on Julia's show?
Huh?
On Julia's show?
I did Julia's show a while back.
Yeah. Did you tell it on that show?
I didn't hear it.
I might have. I don't know. The TikTok jokes I have are just jokes I do specifically for TikTok.
It's the $1 million one. The million viewer.
Which I think the million viewer was the famous motorcycle joke.
Okay.
So the guy goes to visit his girlfriend. he's buying a used motorcycle from his cousin. And he goes to pick it up and he says to his cousin, "My God, your motorcycle's so shiny. It's a used motorcycle, but it's like new. What's your secret?" And his cousin says, "Well, I got a tube of Vaseline. And anytime it's about to rain, I just coat the chrome with the Vaseline. And that way it doesn't tarnish and it doesn't rust. In fact, you're taking a motorcycle. I don't need it. Here, take the tube of Vaseline." All right. So he gets on a motorcycle. He's going to pick up his girlfriend, who's been going out with for a couple months. And they're going to go to her parents' house, and he's going to meet them. And they're going to have dinner for the very first time. So she gets on the back of the motorcycle. And on the way, she says, "I think I should tell you something. My family's very weird. You can't talk during dinner. Because if you talk during dinner, you got to do the dishes." He says, "All right, big deal." So they're on the way and they get to the house. The whole front yard is full of dirty dishes. The porch is all full of dirty dishes. They go inside the living room, the stairs going up. The whole is dirt everywhere you look. They haven't done the dishes in years. So what's he going to say? So they sit down to dinner, and the whole meal, nobody talks. Nobody says nothing. He's done eating. He's a little bit horny because nobody's going to say anything. So he takes his girlfriend and undresses her and puts her on the dining room table, and he fucks her. And nobody says anything. And, you know, he's still a little horny. He looks over. Her mother's kind of cute. Nobody's going to say anything. So he pushes his girlfriend out of the way and puts her mother on the table and fucks her. And just as he's finishing fucking her mother, he looks out the window and he sees it starting to rain on his motorcycle. So he reaches his pocket and takes out the tube of Vaseline. The father jumps up and says, all right, I'll do the fucking dishes.
Jackie, I know from now on that's going to get 3 million. All right, hits. All right.
So
Vaseline.
I did not curse. Somehow I got away with however I said it, but it's just
well, that's the way you have to do it sometimes, you know.
But you know, I told the dirtiest joke in the world on there because they must have a Chinese thing that goes looking for the word, you know, penis. I got a joke. They don't delete them, but they mute them. And I got a joke muted because I said the word dildo. And I got a joke muted because I said the word masturbate. But I've had jokes in there so filthy. The girl goes in and says to the guy behind the counter, I need to buy a dozen condoms. And the guy says, oh, you don't want to have any kids, huh? And she says, no, my boyfriend doesn't want to get any poop on his rocket. which sailed right by.
When you told the joke about the Italian guy in bed with his wife, and he dies and he comes back as a chicken.
Yeah.
I heard you tell that on the Simone show.
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
He couldn't believe I got away with that. I've been really pushing the envelope with him.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, he lets me get away with murder. All right, so listen, March 4th.
Jackie, I can't tell you how wonderful that was.
March 4th,
Thursday,
March 4th.
Thursday, March 4th at the Suffolk Theater in Riverhead. And then in Boston for the whole first week of August with Lenny Clark. I don't know if you know him, but he's just...
I love Lenny Clark. Lenny Clark.
We met over...
I just talked to him not too long ago.
No, not Lenny Schultz, Lenny Clark.
Yeah, we met over a pile of cocaine at the Tampa Comedy Club, Giggles, in 1985. And what else? And plus I'm doing and Stand Up Memories. If you go to standupmemories.com, it's me and Peter. We're just starting our third season, and we had on Joey Cola, and then Joey Cola and his wife, and then we had Carrie Caravis, and then her and her husband, and then we had what's his name? I can never think of these people's names, and his wife, and it's such an interesting take when you get So we're having fun. It's just me and Bales, and we make fun of each other. You know, it's like we're not setting the world on fire. I'm a much better guest than I am an interviewer. Like I like to yak on. And 516-922-WINE is still going. People cannot believe it. People come up to me and say, Jackie, 30 years ago, I used to call that stupid joke line of yours. And now everybody has a cell phone. I say, well, it's still working. Like, what are you talking about? I said, go ahead, dial it. And they'll take out the cell phone, 516-922-WINE. Hello, this is Jackie. And I love it when you use your fingers. They feel like they're in a fucking time warp.
It'll stay with you forever, okay? And, those jokes that I would hear. Did you have a little machine at one time, a joke machine?
I had so many machines. I met a guy. Right after I got off the Stern Show, I met a guy who owned Excalibur Electronics, whose father got rich because he was watching Star Trek, and Spock was playing chess against a robot. And this guy's
three-tier one?
this guy said I could do that in real life. And he invented the first electronic chess. And they did all the chess business. And then this guy, inherited the business from his father. At one point, I had 15 products with him. I had a joke machine, a text joke machine, kids joke machines. I had an insult mirror. I had an alarm clock, a comedy calculator. I actually had a comedy calculator that I recorded so many noises for because people love my stupid noises. Like when you hit 1, 2, 3 times 24 equals 75,300. And there was 5 alarm clocks. I did one of the alarms was and people went nuts. And the guy was doing so well that he overexpanded and lost the entire business.
That's
and like one Christmas, I sold 35,000 Joke Master Juniors. This little gadget, you push the nose and had a kid's joke. And I thought, I'm going to get rich. And it was sold on Sharper Image. And the next year, those cocksuckers knocked it off and made their own version of the same thing. And I'm like,
unbelievable.
Like you
unbelievable. Sharper Image.
But the guy sold so many products through them, he couldn't make waves because it was just my one product. But meanwhile, that's supposed to make me $1 million. My whole career is, I'm lucky enough that Howard looked at my albums, but unfortunate enough that
Did you keep those machines too? Do you have like?
I got representatives of them here, there, and everywhere. They're for sale on. You know what? I'll send you an iPhone video of them operating. I mean, I had a little box with 100 of the filthiest, most wonderful jokes, and it's funny. I had a good friend of mine owned a motorcycle place, and he was really dear friends with Billy Joel, and he had the box on his desk, and he would hit the button once in a while to hear a joke, and he hit the button, and I told a joke, and 5 seconds later, Billy came walking into his office and just missed it. It was like, musicians got it made. Musicians got it made, not comedians. Look at Billy Joel. Billy Joel is fucking girls that look like Christy Brinkley, and I'm fucking girls that look like Billy Joel.
That's mean to say about. That's mean to say about his daughter. Oh man, his daughter looks just like him.
The gadgets were fantastic. There was an old mirror in the old days where you held it up and it laughed, like it's laughing at your face. But this actually insulted you. Like, is that your head or did your neck throw up? That kind of stuff. I had 15 products. I thought I was, at one point I made a couple $100,000, and then the guy completely went under.
It's so funny. That was before computers, that was before the computer got popular. And, it's so funny to think of the old technology that,
that was recent. There was still the computers, but just not to the point where they are now. 15 years ago, I had an app. But this was back when Apple was just going with the apps and you weren't allowed to use anything off color. So I had a little app called the Jackie button. And it had buttons and you could choose marriage, you could choose lawyers, whatever, and you could make it so, and it also had noises. And you could make it so it told jokes at random, or it told all the marriage jokes at random, or you could set a button to play your favorite joke. It was unbelievable. But iPhone 2, iPhone 3, all of a sudden the girl broke up with me, who was best friends with the girl who was married to the guy that did the button for me for free. But then she moved on and the iPhone moved on and the button doesn't work anymore. But if that thing was operating now with dirty jokes, but I can't find anybody that'll do the app for me. With all these people that love me and want to do all this stuff for me, if there's anybody out there that does apps, call me. We'll make $1 billion. Imagine just hit a button and you got a dirty joke right there. People love that.
I'm still trying to make an 8-track work. Okay. I have a couple 8-tracks. Do you have,
When I came out with my first album in 79, I was trying to sell them everywhere. And this one mail order catalog in North Carolina, Adam and Eve bought like 30 albums. Now there's some huge conglomerate, 3 city blocks, girls' lingerie and all that shit out in Los Angeles. But this was a little mom and pop mail order. And, the South is like, years behind us. And they ordered like 10 8-tracks. And I made them 10 8-track cartridges by hand, sent it to them. And I'll tell you how old I am. I don't know how old you guys are. Luckily for my stories, all the bullshit stories I tell, now there's Google. So you can actually go and see that I'm not lying. Like, I'm good friends with Carl Tinker West. He was Bruce Springsteen's first manager. No, he wasn't his first manager. Mark Appel, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, Tinker passed them. And there you're crazy. But now, if you go on the web, you can see Tinker had them rehearsing in his garage all the time, Before there were 8-tracks, there were 4-tracks. The cartridge looked like an 8-track does, but there was a hole in the bottom, and you'd literally set the 4-track on top of the player, and there was almost like a gear shift that you would push that would bring the pinch roller up, and it would spin. And it turns out that it was created for some car salesman in California, so he had something extra to give away with the cars he was selling. And then sooner, within like, because those things you buy one album, you get 11 free, and for 1 penny or for 99 cents, you get 12
Columbia. I got a
Columbia Record Club. Well, at some point they said, you buy 12 4-track cartridges, you get the player. So I got the player and the cartridges. And like within a year or so, because I was in college and, you're only there a certain amount of time. After 6 months or something, all of a sudden the same ad was there. Only it was an 8-track player, but they must have had the rights to certain records, because I got the same 8-tracks that I had of the 4-tracks. And I can still remember them. It was the Vanilla Fudge, the first Bee Gees, Bookends, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? I mean, I could almost name them all. I think I had like 8 of them, and it was just phenomenal. And then in the further life, I'd say, yeah, there used to be 4-track players, and everybody, you're so out of your mind, you're such a jerk, you're such an idiot, you're so fogged up. But now, if you look, it's an interesting story.
I had no idea on that story. I had and I like that stuff. I know Edison started it, and up until the last.
If you Google it, you'll be amazed. So, I was just thrilled to find out there was really such thing as 4-track cartridges. But the fact that, this guy must have had them made, and they must have had a warehouse full of them, and just handed them to Columbia Records, because that's all they were. You could get 12 records for a penny.
It's
you could go through those records 45 times and not pick out 12. Right. I mean, the best one I had was Duke Ellington plays Mary Poppins.
Oh, right. Is that a true one? Did the Duke really play that?
Yeah, you know what? And I ordered so much shit from the Columbia Record Club, because at some point they were actually giving out record players. They were little plastic pieces of shit, but they worked, right? So I would order all this stuff, because sometimes they change it and it'd be one good album. So you'd order, and I had like probably a couple hundred records. And I lived in this little crappy house after my girlfriend moved out, and I lived in the attic. And it was like an eave. And on one side of the eave, I had my Fender Stratocaster and my Fender Vibra-Verb amplifier and whatever other guitar stuff under one eave. And under the other eave was this length of these horrible albums. And I got robbed. And the people who robbed me didn't touch the guitar or they stole all those records. And these guys must have got home and started looking through these records and saying, "Who the fuck? What? Who the fuck? What kind of tapes is this?" I don't know why I didn't just throw them away. Oh,
Isn't it amazing? I mean, all the great albums that are out there, but how many bad albums there actually is, and how many, weirdo albums. You got to pick and choose, and I guess those were the ones that didn't sell. That's what a
Right.
sale is. But
that's why they had them. Oh, Jesus. It was just, crazy, crazy
so
shit.
what was the last show you went to that wasn't you? Okay, that wasn't that you weren't part of, but you went to go see them.
Not that long ago. What the hell would it have been?
It's not comedy. It could be a concert.
Oh yeah, either one.
It's been, I went to see David Brom, but with the pandemic, I don't know, it was a year ago or six, I went to see David Bromberg. I went to see there's a Billy Joel called the Lords of 52nd Street. It's the old Billy Joel band. And the guy singing with him, I mean, it's like going to see Billy Joel. They're so great. What else have I seen? I just don't go very often.
We're in the business. That's why,
I never go to comedy ever.
How was David Bromberg? He was weird this time out. I saw him this time out, me and my brother, and he went on tangents and stuff.
Yeah, but I love that. I didn't see him this time. My sister and her husband saw him this time. I saw him the time before, and he came through. I'm trying to think who I went to see. I mean, I've been to see Willie a bunch of times, but we went to see him. It's so funny because I cleared it so we could record me and him talking in the bus, and we did it in New Orleans. He was playing at the House of Blues, and his bus was in front of the House of Blues. And I was with my guy Ian, who's remind me to promote my documentary. So it's going to tape the documentary. So he's got his camera, and we're outside the House of Blues, and we're in Willie's bus, and they got the door locked, and Ian's shooting, and me and Willie talk for like 10 or 12 minutes, and we get done. And Ian's a nice Jewish boy, and Willie's got his Willie's Reserve, in his electronic pipe. And he takes a big hit of pot, and you want some, and he hands it to me, and I take a big hit. And he gives it to Ian. But what are you going to do? You're with Willie Nelson, Jewish boy or not. So he takes a big hit off the pie. Oh, today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Ian. Takes a hit off it and gives it back to Willie. Well, Ian starts coughing. He's coughing so long. I'm like, well, I'm waiting for him. I'm like, fuck it, Willie, give me that. So I take another hit off the pipe. And Willie's got to go because he's going to be on stage in 10 minutes. So we get off the bus and go into the see him. And Ian can't get into the show because he's got a backpack with the camera in it. We weren't thinking. Of course he can't bring the camera in. And we're in New Orleans. And we don't know where we are. And a couple of blocks away is our hotel. Here he is stoned on Willie Nelson's pot. And he has to find his way back to the hotel, drop off the camera, and come back. And he's out of his mind. And I go in, and I'm leaning against the back of the club watching Willie. And I am so fucked up. And here's Willie, who just smoked the exact same pot that we did. And he walks out on stage and does a flawless 75-minute set. And finally, Ian comes walking back in. He's like, oh, man. He says, I don't know how the hell I think. I said, well, look at him. He's up there doing his show, with smoking the same. Oh, God, just phenomenal, crazy shit. So
that is like, you have touched a lot of the icons, okay, of my generation. And, it's just great that you get to do that. But have you ever met Soupy Sales? I mean, did you hang with Soupy?
Soupy and me were very good buddies. And, I just met a guy a month ago who was like Soupy's right-hand man for decades. And I'm supposed to go to lunch with him. I haven't yet. But Soupy followed the Stern Show at the end of the NBC run. Before Howard got fired from NBC, Soupy went on before him. And Howard because Howard was so thrilled to meet Soupy because our childhood hero, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, every relationship Howard ever had degenerates. And he went off his mind out of his mind because Soupy would eat his salad while he's doing his show. So the microphone smelled like Soupy's salad. So Howard would go crazy. Meanwhile, Soupy worked a lot of the same clubs. His 8x10 was up there with the ugly girls, And then the Friars Club, we became, we did a roast for him, and it was great fun. And he was a good pal. And at the end, he was doing some kind of show at the Friars, and sometimes they put a makeshift stage up there, like a riser, and hang a curtain. But
he was in a chair, in a wheelchair for a while.
And Soupy went to lean on the curtain, thinking it was the wall, and there was nothing there, and he fell off the stage and really got hurt. And then he had a couple of strokes. So he was in such bad shape. I mean, he was really hurting. And the last time I saw him, I was going into the Friars Club, and the dining room door wasn't that wide. And I was about to go into the dining room, and Soupy was leaving the dining room, and he had a walker. And he's walking with a walker. And as he comes out, we're just past each other in the doorway, and he goes, and I mean, he's frail. I mean, he's got a walker, but he's frail. He weighs 30 pounds. And he goes, Jack, I went to the bank today, and I asked the guy to check my balance, and he pushed me. I said, you son of a bitch, you're halfway in death's door, and you're still not just making a joke, but making the perfect joke. And he pushed me. How classic is that? How classic.
He worked in Detroit for a long time. That's where he was from. And he used to be on a television station where he would do the news. He would do like a jazz show, and he would do a kid show. He would do jack of all trades.
My roommate was from Livonia, Michigan, and he knew Soupy Sales from when he was in Detroit.
Yeah, I got to read a bunch of his notes. Okay, I mean, dating back to when he was in West Virginia, and all through his career. My friend was one of the executors of his stuff. Since donated, but I went through his papers, and it was like the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, it was all wrapped in Muslim, and it was like it was like a sacred thing.
Oh,
that's going through it. It's all different. There's
a
pieces
fly,
of paper and
there's
everything.
a fly
like
in my
that.
soup. Jokes.
All those.
Kids. His kids played with David Bowie.
Yeah, the Tin Machine. They were,
and when we got to do a series of 5 pilots for Fox that never got picked up. They were really horrible, but the Stern Show did 5 TV pilots, and I got so excited because backstage at NEW in the crap there was so many huge crates with Soupy Sales stenciled on them, and it just like, wow, welcome to showbiz, man.
When I was going through his papers, I found the Western Union yellow piece of paper that said he was not terminated, but that for doing that $5 for send me the money joke.
Oh, really?
There was an actual, from Metro Media to say that, okay, you're suspended, okay, for a month or something like that. But that was like the Rosetta Stone of Soupy Sales, that you wanted to see that was true.
Oh,
unbelievable.
That's just so cool. You know what knocked me out was for a while on the Stern Show, we were followed on the air by John Zagerle.
Okay.
That was the guy's real name. I always thought it was a name they concocted for a guy that was hosting, a scary show but John Zacherle's real name was Zacherle.
And how about his laugh? He had that laugh. Okay. I mean, it was unbelievable. And he was in two markets, wasn't he?
He started in Philadelphia.
He started in Philly, and then he was here. Was he Roland?
Roland.
That was his name here, Roland. And then he made it big, and now he's called Svengoolie. No, now, you know, but he was such a nice guy. I got drunk with him. In Newark at a Portuguese bar, and we were drinking that sangria.
Sake, yeah.
He was funny. He was nice. I mean, you know.
I only talked to him for 5 seconds a couple times, but you know, you just couldn't get, you know, it just couldn't, you know, so much crazy, great stuff. We were on the air one time, and the door slammed open at like 6:15, and it was Sam Kinison, Pat McCormick, Chuck McCann, and I think the guy's name was Jack Riley. He was one of the guys on the original Newhart show.
That is such a motley crew right there.
That is the Mount Rushmore of comedy. Like Sam got off stage at the Comedy Store, and those guys were all hanging out, and he said, "Come on, man, let's get on my plane and go do the Stern Show." And they just got on the plane and started doing coke and just showed up and walked. And I'm sitting there, and behind me, I got McCormick and Riley. I'm like, you died and went that. You know, I've never looked on Google to see if that show's on there. You know, they say they've taken down so many. Now, I don't remember if the E Show was happening. The E Show didn't happen till like 1992 or something like that. And, you know, from 96 to 90, a lot happened, you know.
I remember Judy Tenuta and myself, you had a TV show. And I remember two of the Young Rascals were in the audience.
Oh, you're talking about my TV show. Spotlight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Eddie Brigatti came with his brother, David Brigatti.
That was the biggest thing in my life because they were my heroes, those guys, the Young Rascals.
It's so funny because I swear to God, an hour before I was on the phone with you, I just texted Gene from the Rascals because I just read that him and Felix are going out. So I said, you know what? I got to do this. I bought Gene's book. It's funny because I got to be good friends with Gene. I got to be good friends with Felix, and I got to be good friends with Eddie, but they all hated each other so much. But, you know, the only one I didn't meet was Dino. I think I met him in passing once, but Felix, I used to just bury with jokes. And Eddie that shocked the piss out of me when he showed up at those shows. And Gene was a huge joke fan. So he would always be trying to tell me jokes I hadn't heard. I met him. Do you ever do the Joey Reynolds show? Do you remember Joey Reynolds?
He was in Philly for a little bit.
Yeah, no, Joey Reynolds followed us after Howard got fired from NBC, but he's the original shock jock, and he'd been around forever. And he had a show from midnight till 4 a.m. for years and years and years on, was it WABC, WOR. And I met so many people on his show. God, it was unbelievable. And he's still around. He's still such a character. But Gene came on one time, and, you know, I mean, childhood heroes. I mean, you can't believe that I'm sitting there on the Stern Show shooting the breeze with Leslie West, and I'm pinching myself, you know. I mean, I'm sitting there writing horrible things for Howard to say to James Taylor, who's sitting knee to me right next to me. And then he played like 4 songs. I'm sitting there knees to knees, and he's singing Carolina in my mind. And I'm like, did I die and go to heaven? What the fuck is up here?
That's showbiz, baby. All right. And you had your finger on the pulse of it. Think about the good taste that you had and the people that you got to hang around with. It's,
I never ever, you know, I never got used to it. You know, I was very sneaky, which you know, and Howard was besides being an egomaniac and being rude, these people would come on the Stern Show and they really didn't know what to expect. So when they came into that show, they were like a deer in the headlights because they don't know what the hell's going to happen. From what they've heard, there's a bomb's going to go off behind them. So they would lock in with Howard. Of course, Howard would never say, "Oh, this is Fred and this is Jackie," because he doesn't want them to say, "Well, what do they do?" "Oh, they're my writers. They're making me funny." Like we would just say part of the woodwork. So I would have Steve Grillo get me the contact information for the guest.
Mm-hmm.
So Clarence Clemens, Roger Daltrey, Diamond Dave, what's his last name? Diamond Dave from Van Halen.
Yeah,
Branford Marsalis. So many of these guys came on the show, and then they wound up coming on again. But I would send them my CDs and my jokes and my joke machines, et cetera, et cetera. And the next time they came on the show, they would forget that they never met me. So, like Clarence Clemens comes in the show and says, "Hi, Howard. Hi, Jackie." And like Howard's like, "What the fuck?" And then I'll never forget this because I got up to take a leak when we took a break. And I came back and Howard was sitting back in his chair and he looked a little annoyed. He said, "Yeah, Clarence is telling me how they stay up after hours after the band gig, listen to your CDs, how funny you are." And I could see that was just, and Clarence like, "Yeah, Jackie, you're the funniest motherfucker, man." And I walked in one time and I had sent my joke machines to Roger Daltrey, and I guess he has salmon farms in Scotland. And he'd sit there and watch the fish and listen to the joke machine. And they had little cassettes in them. And I walked in the first.
That's when you know you made it, baby. That's when you know you made it.
I walked in and Roger Daltrey says, "Mate, I got to have more tapes. I'm wearing out your tapes." And Howard wanted to fucking kill me. But and that's what I did with Willie. I sent all my shit to Willie, to the bus driver. They're on the road. They're on the fucking road. They live for, Leslie West said on the Ringo tour, on the plane, they were playing my dirty joke CDs. The guys are going fucking wild,
That must be that must be to entertain when you're not really there is it's such a beautiful feeling.
It's Flo from Flo and Eddie, the Turtles. He still goes out. Eddie is sick. I don't think Eddie might have passed away, but I know Eddie's ill. But they've been going out forever, and they do the Happy Together tour. They used to work for my friend Toby, but they didn't. They could do their own tour after a while, and they were out a couple of years ago. And Ian and me were out shooting for the documentary, and he came to one of my gigs and shot the whole thing and shot me eating chicken and blah blah blah. And he put the camera away. So me and Ian are driving back from. Oh, it's such a weird name of this town in Philadelphia. You would definitely know what it was. What the hell's it? I don't know.
Manayunk.
They have a very odd
Conshohocken.
An odd little entertainment space. But we're coming back and the phone rings. And it's Flo. It's Mark Volman. He said, "Jackie, I'm here on the bus. We're on tour and I'm with the Cowsills and I'm with 3 other groups, A, B, or C, pick them at random, we're on the road and we need a couple of jokes to wake us up, man." So I'm on the speakerphone and he puts me on the speakerphone on the bus and I'm killing like 3 or 4 oldies groups, but the fucking camera is in the trunk. So I have no proof that happened. and that's something it's absolutely worthless to me. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't make a penny from it, but it's just it's so flattering that entertainers would call you to have you do that, And then the Cowsills got entered into the Long Island Hall of Fame, and I was inducting somebody, and I was backstage. I said, "Hi, I'm Jackie Martling." They said, "Hello." I said, "You don't know who I am, but I was the guy telling the jokes on the bus." "Oh man, you're that."
Jackie, do you remember a room in Ronkonkoma on the island?
Lake Ronkonkoma?
Yeah, there was a room out there because I'm telling you that the Long Island comedians were a different breed. Okay, they were a different breed from anybody from New York City, even from or from Boston or from Philly. They were their own breed. Just
There was
that
a
part
real line of demarcation back in those days, for sure.
Yeah, I mean that was before, I guess, cable TV even, and so people were a little bit more localized because I thought they were the toughest people in the world. They were much tougher than Philadelphia, and they were much and they weren't as sophisticated as the New York crowds. And so
No. Like it was like
they liked their homeboys.
it was night and day.
How about Dave
well,
Hawthorne?
I live
Dave
in
Hawthorne. Have
I
you
live in
heard from him?
Nassau. If you go 10 miles east of Nassau, you're in Alabama. At least that's how it used to be. Hawthorne was just here a couple of weeks ago. He came for Christmas.
Yeah. How is he doing? I have no.
He's writing, he's directing and starring in plays out in. They have their own little play group and their own little theater out in Los Angeles and Encino. He's just a character. He's a great character.
He did the best Georgie Jessel. Remember, he would do Georgie Jessel, and he would do.
Everybody he did was dead. Walter Brennan, Georgie Jessel, Ed.
Dead. They were ancient. I loved it. I mean, that was
40 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and it was. I was just wondering about him. He was.
The people that saw him still can quote from his act. Oh, he's a poet. Oh, I didn't know. I don't know if you know, but 1971, he was in a 3-man group with Billy Crystal.
Yeah. Okay.
They were supposed to go to the moon, and then a guy told Billy Crystal, "You could be a big star. You got to dump these other two guys." So that broke Hawthorne's heart when we saw him. When we started working with him, his heart had been broken for 8 years. So, but he's a great character. I'm not sure what club was in Ronkonkoma, but there are a lot of clubs out there. Bohemia, and
Dave was he was an actor. He was he had acting chops. He was like Woods had that.
Yeah, definitely.
Bobby Woods.
Jesus.
What was that movie? What was that movie that all the
Rider PI?
Rider PI.
Oh,
I went to the premiere of that.
Oh,
you're the voice of the robot.
Is a famous, huh?
You're the voice in that.
Yeah, I was the insult voice when a fat person wanted to take something out of the refrigerator. Jim Myers was in the movie, and so was his 7-year-old son. And Myers said, "You know what? How often am I going to get to be in a movie with my kid?" So he booked a limo to go to the premiere. And meanwhile, the premiere was only at I was out of town, but it was at some little, 7.
It was a rinky-dink theater.
Yeah, a Cineplex.
Yeah.
But Myers gets a limo, and him and his kid go to the premiere of the movie in the limo. And he said, "Jackie, the movie was so fucking bad, it was worth renting the limo, so we had tinted windows on the way home." Oh yeah,
and Howard was in that too. He was a wraparound. Woods, Minervini,
a couple of club owners. Andy Scarpati from he's a mailman.
Andy Scarpati was in it too.
He's a mailman.
Yeah, they put everybody in. Mulrooney and Nelson, and there's still the poster was done by a Mad Magazine guy. You ever see the poster? It's beautiful. So Jack Davis or one of those guys.
That he that movie was I heard everybody talking about it for a long time because that was my when I was pretty young. And I was so hoping it was going to be good.
It took so long because they borrow $5 and shoot $5 worth of movie, and they borrow $10 and shoot $10 worth of movie.
People before it came out would use it as a credit at the and fill it, and they'll be appearing in Writer PI.
Right.
And then after it came out, nobody said nothing.
Don't mention it. Don't mention it.
Is it on the web? Yeah, it must.
Oh
be.
yeah, if you Google it, you will see that amazing Writer PI.
Oh, he's got it. He's got it.
I got a VHS of a copy of it somewhere too.
A Writer PI?
Yeah. I think I sent away for it. It was like $3.
You know what? It's right here.
It's a red box, right? I think. Yeah.
It's right here, but I don't know where.
Writer PI. Well, our engineer has given us the wink, okay? Meaning that we have to wrap up.
So
because
my documentary is
Yes.
called Joke Man. Joke Man. And it's going to be distributed by Random Media. It's going to be on all the places. We're probably going to make it really cheap because I don't care about money. I want people to see it. I don't care if it's $1.99. You might be pleasantly surprised. Penn Jillette's in it. Willie Nelson's in it. Mark Cuban is in it.
wow.
I got that. We got to do this again. I'll tell you, my connection with Mark Cuban is a whole story too. And it's very interesting. And we needed a slug line. How every movie says, Gone with the Wind, the Old South, So I came up with the slug line, and Ian and the other producer really loved it. It's Joke Man. You haven't heard this one, which is great. And it's the story, you guys will get a kick out of it. Comedians will get a kick out of it,
I bet. Are you ever going to bring back Stump the Asshole?
I still do that on stage, not as much, but I still love doing that. I look at old tapes of that from the Rascals Comedy Hour. I mean, you look up the word politically correct. It's like somebody set fire to it. Blowing on girls' nipples and goosing but it was all such fun. There was no as you'd have to say it was lewd, but it wasn't. Everything is style. You could say fuck you to somebody and be horrible, or you could say fuck you with love, so fuck you.
And fuck you too, Jackie.
Go away.
The Joke Man, and be sure to catch him on my favorite day because I'm a punster, March 4th. Okay, which is a great day to have. And where's that going to be?
That's going to be at the Suffolk Theater in Riverhead. My last day on the Stern Show was a March 4th, and I always said, "Yeah, I marched forth on March 4th." You know what? I got stumped on the. I went out with these guys to make this show, and I'm playing Stump the Joke Man under the Pantages marquee on Sunset Boulevard. And this lady comes along with a little kid, and she says, "Oh, can Johnny try and stump you with a joke?" And the fucking kid stumped me with a joke. Why were all the soldiers so tired on April 1st? So right away, what are you going to? Right away in your mind, April Fool's Day, April Fool's Day.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
They just got done with a day march.
Third day of March. Here's his new closer.
I kicked the kid in the chop.
That's my new closer. Close. Whew.
You kicked the
All
kid.
Right, go away, you guys. I got to go inside and make trouble. But this was
Jackie. I love you, baby. All right.
Truly great.
And it was a wonderful thing that you did for us. All right. Being here at Cancel Culture, John Cancel Culture. I'm just as pleased as punch. And I'm glad we touched on all those mutual likes that we have.
It's crazy, but I could do this forever because, I know I'm basically talking about myself, but I'm not talking about myself.
You're talking about the annals of history.
How much
the annals of show business
for the old guys and the old things, and I love it all. So
love it all and keep loving it. And
John, I've been fighting tooth and nail to try and get back into the Parx Casino. I don't think what's his face, Joe Dinkins, wants to share the spotlight over there. You know,
Joe Conklin.
I'll stop. I'll see him on Thursday. I'll take a ride up.
he told me he's working on it. I know he could hire me. Just tell him I don't have to get paid a lot. I just want to come down there. I always had fun. Go to Chickies and have a wing, It's great. But tell everybody I said hello. I'm going to go away.
All right.
I love you, Jackie, and thank you for being here.
You,
okay. And we'll talk again anytime.
I hope so.
I know where all the bodies are buried. So if you want to, pick my mind one time, I can tell you,
I'm going to say 2 words and then unplug my phone. Kevin Sullivan.
Oh.
People, that was a great super. Several interviews will be airing at different times. But Jackie the Joke Man, check him out. His documentary called Joke Man.
Very interesting.
Oh my God!
And knows about his show business, and that was very intriguing. I think that we hit the right.
Yes.
I think that we hit the right buttons. Okay, and this is the legendary WED and John Kensel saying, "Tune into Kensel Culture."
Subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for watching us.